Chapter 66. After having dinner with old Ku, Xiao Xian took Caesar back to his cabin. Although he hadn't been home for more than 20 days, it was obvious that someone had cleaned the cabin. The water tank was filled with water, and it didn't look like it had been left there for a few days. Even the animal skin on the bed had been washed and dried. There were no worms or other smells. Obviously, old Ku had asked someone to do it for him. After lighting a fire, Xiao Xian moved his arms a little. Only 3 hours had passed, but Xiao Xian could already feel that most of his broken bones had healed. It was indeed a good medicine. As for the totem tattoos on his body, Xiao Xian certainly knew that he was faster than the others. Among this group of awakened warriors, the totem tattoos on Mao's arm only extended to half a finger. During hunting, although Xiao Xian was also wearing a sleeveless animal skin coat, at that time, everyone only paid attention to the prey. In the dangerous forest, one careless mistake could lead to death. Therefore, everyone was very cautious. No one would be distracted by the totem tattoos on other people's bodies. In addition, Xiao Xian was very good at controlling the totem power, so the totem tattoos appeared and disappeared very quickly. After a prey was killed and everyone was free, the totem tattoos on Xiao Xian's body had already disappeared. Therefore, during the hunting, no one noticed the amazing speed of the totem tattoos on Xiao Xian's arm extending. Just now, old Ku was so scared that he even broke his walking stick. At first glance, he couldn't believe it, so he rubbed his eyes and checked it several times. He believed that if others saw it, they would also be very surprised. For example, Kiki. After the first punch, Kiki glanced at Xiao Xian's arm. Xiao Xian noticed that Kiki's attack didn't have any real killing intent. Xiao Xian knew that it was just a test. He was just curious about the purpose of Kiki and Tua. Lying on the bed, the nerves that had been tense for the past few days finally relaxed completely. It was indeed very comfortable in the tribe. After a good night's sleep, Xiao Xian woke up the next morning. He stretched his body and found that the bone injury on his arm had completely healed. It was much faster than the few days old Ku had said. In fact, even if he didn't drink the medicine, he could still recover overnight. She cooked a pot of wild fruits and dried meat soup and shared some with Caesar. It didn't taste good, but he was already used to it. There wasn't much soup. Xiao Xian wasn't full. He looked at Caesar and saw that it was the same. Patting Caesar's head, Xiao Xian said, "When the prey is sent back, I'll give you something good to eat." Caesar smacked his lips, yawned slowly, and stretched. Seeing this stupid look, Xiao Xian thought of the hunting wolf pack he saw when he went to the second stronghold. Compared to the wolves in the forest, Caesar really didn't have the wolf nature. If it continued like this, he might really turn into a dog. He just didn't know whether that would be a blessing or a curse. After taking a shower, Xiao Xian dragged Caesar out and took out a fish toothbrush to brush him. He hadn't bathed for more than 20 days. This guy rolled on the ground every day. He might have been teased by Gu, because there were many lumps on his fur. Old Ku would help Xiao Xian clean the house, but he wouldn't give Caesar a bath. In old Ku's eyes, Caesar was still just a spare prey. Why would a prey need a bath? When Tua and Kiki brought the prey to Xiao Xian, they saw Xiao Xian brushing Caesar's fur outside the house. Originally, the shaman had arranged for someone else to help Xiao Xian carry the prey down the mountain. They asked the shaman for this job later. "Hey, your arm is fine." Seeing Xiao Xian brushing Caesar's fur nimbly without any injury, Kiki threw away the things he was carrying and wanted to go over to check Xiao Xian's arm, but was stopped by Tua. Kiki was still struggling. Tua mouthed, "Team leader," and Kiki immediately quieted down. After he went back yesterday, he was dragged out by the team leader and beaten up again. Today, his face was still swollen. After Tua and Kiki moved the prey into the house, Xiao Xian thanked them with a smile. He wanted to give them some meat to express his gratitude, but was rejected by Tua. Tuo found that although Xiao Xian's attitude was not bad, he was not very enthusiastic either. There was no other way. After all, Kiki had broken his arm yesterday. Tuo smiled embarrassedly and said, "By the way, the shaman said that we should wash up and go to the top of the mountain the day after tomorrow to worship our ancestors. We will go there in the morning." They didn't stay here for long. Fearing that Kiki would do something stupid again, Tuo pulled Kiki away and left. After brushing Caesar's fur, Xiao Xian went into the house to check on the food that had been delivered. The prey that was placed on the mountain yesterday had been processed by someone. Even the skin of the thorn black wind had been skillfully peeled off. There were 2 layers of skin. One layer was hard scales, and the other was thick and tough skin. The 2 layers of skin had been separated, and someone had specially processed it. There was no smell of blood, and it was very clean. Caesar stood 2 meters away from the thorn black wind and bared his teeth. Obviously, he was very afraid of this creature, but he was also curious and greedy. He growled while licking his lips. Xiao Xian took out the smallest piece of meat and planned to give it to Caesar. After thinking for a while, he took out a tool and cut it again, then threw the small piece to Caesar. The meat of high-level prey contained too much energy. Xiao Xian didn't know how much energy Caesar could bear. Looking at the pile of food in front of him, Xiao Xian calculated how much salt he could exchange with the tribe. In order to attend the ceremony to worship their ancestors, everyone in the tribe was busy. They took out their favorite things, and the scale of the ceremony was no less than that of the snow festival. Even the other hunting group that was supposed to leave had to postpone their departure for a few days. They would leave after the ceremony. Xiao Xian asked someone to make a shirt with the scales of the thorn black wind, and he wore it like an armor. Although it looked silly, it was necessary to show off. This was one of the most direct ways to prove one's ability in the tribe. Xiao Xian also did as the Romans did. Of course, Xiao Xian didn't forget to send some scales and meat to Mao. After all, Mao also contributed to the hunt of the thorn black wind. After 50 days, the tribe held another grand ceremony for the whole tribe. This time, it was not as troublesome as the snow festival, and no one danced. Xiao Xian was arranged to sit near the fire pit. As the biggest hero who found the ancestors, he had the right to do so, and no one in the tribe objected. Therefore, the people in the tribe noticed that among the group of people near the fire pit, only Xiao Xian, who was obviously thin and weak, was standing there. This time, Xiao Xian didn't dare to be absent-minded. He carefully followed the people in the tribe to worship the ancestors. He thought to himself, "Ancestors, please bless me for a successful hunt in the future. Don't get into trouble again." The 4 ancestors were cremated in the fire pit. The flame of the fire seed, which was originally harmless, expanded and wrapped the 4 withered bodies. Soon, the 4 bodies gradually disappeared, without even a trace of smoke. When the flame of the fire seed returned to its original size, the fire pit also returned to its original state. There was no ashes, and no residue left. Every deceased person in the tribe would be cremated in this way, but not everyone could hold a big ceremony during the cremation, not to mention the scale of the ceremony that belonged to the ancestors was no less than the snow festival. Xiao Xian noticed that the bone ornament was gone. Obviously, it was left behind by the shaman. Well, it was a pity to burn such a treasure. After the ceremony was over, Xiao Xian was called over by the shaman. The shaman asked Xiao Xian about what happened in the cave. He asked more details than the others. Moreover, the shaman's focus was more on Xiao Xian's induction at that time, which was the so-called totem guidance. Xiao Xian told the shaman what he had prepared, and pretended to be stupid when it was necessary. He stayed with the shaman for more than an hour, and then was released. After Xiao Xian left, the shaman took out a jade stone box and carefully opened it. There were 3 similar bone ornaments neatly placed inside. If Xiao Xian was here, he would be very surprised. It turned out that there was more than one such treasure. But the difference was that the small ball in the middle of the bone ornament was not as shiny as before. It was very dim. Beside the stone box, there was an animal skin roll. It didn't look old, but in fact, it had a history of nearly 1,000 years. Opening the animal skin roll, there were several relatively simple drawings, but it could be seen that they were the bone ornaments in the stone box. Finally, I found them all. The shaman sighed. If someone was here, they would be puzzled. There were 6 similar bone ornaments drawn on the animal skin roll, but there were only 3 in the stone box. Yet, the shaman said, I found them all. Thinking of Xiao Xian's answer, the shaman's slightly sad face showed a trace of a smile. He knew that Xiao Xian was not completely honest, but it didn't matter. The power of the fire seed can tell you the most correct direction, just like in the ancient times, the ancestors used fire to illuminate the night. He had indeed said this before, but in fact, there were very few people who could do it. Even if they could sense it, they were not as sharp as Xiao Xian, and it was far less intense. It was just a kind of vague feeling. With just a vague feeling, it was impossible to walk out of the cave. Just like the ancestors, they could sense a little bit and find the elder's location, but they couldn't walk out of the cave. Thinking back to Xiao Xian's awakening, he was different from others. He was more inclined to awakening with a complete fire seed. Was this the difference between a complete fire seed and an incomplete fire seed? The shaman looked at the bone ornament in front of him, stretched out his old bark-like hand, and carefully touched the dim ball on the bone ornament. He put the animal skin roll back, closed the stone box, and put it back in its original place. Taking 2 steps back, the shaman looked at the stone box quietly and bowed respectfully. The elder, this title had disappeared in the tribe for nearly 1,000 years, and no one knew when it would appear again. Chapter 67. The old Ku didn't tell anyone about Xiao Xian's strange improvement speed. According to his observation in the next few days, Xiao Xian found that Kiki and the others didn't mention it to anyone either. Therefore, when people in the tribe looked at Xiao Xian, they only praised him as a brave warrior, a warrior blessed by their ancestors. Other than that, there was nothing else. Even Gu, who often went to old Ku's place, didn't know. After returning, Xiao Xian sent some food to a few families he was familiar with. Of course, he didn't leave old Ku and Gu behind. He also sent some food to Auntie Ai, who helped Xiao Xian sew things, the people who taught numbers, and the kids in the cave. Xiao Xian had almost finished learning how to polish stoneware. The shamaness and the chief had sent him some high-quality stone cores. Xiao Xian polished a few spearheads, while old Ku had finished polishing the broken tip of the teeth knife. It didn't look good, but it was still usable. Take a look. What do you think of this one? Xiao Xian handed the polished spearhead to old Ku. Old Ku slowly raised his eyelids and looked at it. He didn't touch it, but said directly, "It's good." It wasn't easy to get a good comment from old Ku, because many stoneware craftsmen in the tribe would be mercilessly criticized by old Ku as trash. In comparison, Xiao Xian's skills were quite good. Xiao Xian put aside the polished stoneware, and approached old Ku with a smile, saying, "You see, my stoneware crafting skills are almost there. You also said that if I want to improve, I have to practice more. Can you move on to the next stage of teaching?" Old Ku wasn't famous for his stoneware crafting skills, but for his amazing skill of setting traps. "Do you want to learn?" Old Ku asked in a low voice. "It's hard work." "Of course. I'm not afraid of hard work." Xiao Xian nodded quickly. "Okay, you can come back tomorrow morning." "Oh, okay, I'll go now." Xiao Xian still helped old Ku set up the stone pot and cut the firewood before he left. After Xiao Xian left, old Ku's expressionless face couldn't help but smile. The next morning, when Xiao Xian's place, Caesar, old Ku was already waiting. "Take it." Old Ku pointed at a small wooden box beside him, and walked out with his crutch. Xiao Xian hurried over to carry the box. It wasn't heavy, and he didn't open it to see what was inside. Caesar was yawning when he was knocked on the head by a wooden cane. He bared his teeth and looked over. When he saw Old Ku, he quickly hid his teeth. Unexpectedly, Old Ku walked over to Caesar's side and sat on the wolf's back. He almost squashed the unprepared Caesar. Caesar moved uneasily. Old Ku hit him twice with his cane, and he calmed down. He wasn't afraid of other people in the mountain foot area, but he was afraid of Old Ku. Go to the training ground. Old Ku pointed with his cane. Oh. Xiao Xian carried the box and headed over. Caesar was 1 year old now. He was growing fast, and he often helped Xiao Xian and Old Ku to carry things. Of course, he could carry Old Ku on his back. He almost fell just now because he wasn't prepared. Therefore, when Gu was chewing a piece of jerky in the morning, he saw Old Ku sitting comfortably on the wolf's back with his cane. Gu was so shocked that he almost choked. Gu became familiar with Old Ku later. He was also a disabled person in the tribe, and he couldn't stay idle. Plus, he was thick-skinned, so he often went to Old Ku's place. In Ji's opinion, Old Ku was too strong. After losing a leg, he quit the hunting team and didn't let others help him. In the end, he even moved down the mountain and separated from his teammates. He didn't accept gifts from others, because he thought it was charity and hurt his self-esteem. Every year when he went up the mountain to participate in the ceremony, he didn't let others support him, carry him, or carry him. He just walked slowly up the mountain with his cane and one leg. It seemed that he was afraid that others would say he couldn't walk, so he walked on his own wherever he went. This stubbornness lasted for decades. But now, who was sitting on the wolf's back? Could it be that their attitude towards wolves was different from that of humans? Not walking on his own. Was he not afraid of being criticized? What happened to his so-called self-esteem? Was it eaten by Caesar? There were a few low hills full of trees near the training ground. Usually, people would get wood there. There were not many plant species, and there were not many animals that could be eaten except for flying stone squirrels with strong reproductive abilities. They were probably eaten up long ago. The trees here were not as thick as the ones in the hunting forest, but they were enough for daily use. Some of the thicker ones were as thick as buckets. Why did people hunt? The answer was, in order to pursue the adaptation strategy of maximizing energy. Fruits, vegetables, grains, river fish, and animal meat were all on the tribe's menu. Fruits, vegetables, and grains could be found in the surrounding hills, but there were not many of them. The river fish was newly added last year, so people in the mountain foot area ate a lot of them. As for animal meat, it was the staple food of the tribe, and also the food with the most energy in the diet, especially high-level animal meat. Therefore, when people in the tribe hunted, they not only followed the development strategy set by their ancestors, but also to satisfy their own energy needs. The higher the level of a warrior, the more inclined they would be to eat high-energy food, and low-energy food would not be of much help to them. When hunting, in addition to assassinating and slaughtering, they would also use the method of setting traps. A good noose and trap could become a very dangerous lurking killer. Old Ku used to be a lurking killer. After getting down from Caesar's back, Old Ku did not immediately teach Xiao Xian how to set a noose. Instead, he first told Xiao Xian what to pay attention to, such as how to make use of the environment and how to hide the trap. After the lesson, Old Ku began to set a simple trap. As he worked, he explained the technical points involved in each step to Xiao Xian. Different types of traps, such as hole traps, intersection traps, flat traps, etc., all had their own characteristics, and there were many changes made according to the prey species. How big should the mouth of the trap be? How much should it cover around the prey's head? Is animal hair better or straw rope more suitable for the connecting thread used for the snares? Double-sided, single-sided, or compound? Or, should they make a series of traps? Should they dig a hole? Should they set a knife post? Although Xiao Xian had seen Lang Jie set traps, after listening to Old Ke's explanation, he knew that the two men's styles were indeed very different. Lang Ga's family also set traps. Lang Ga's grandfather's trap was also very good, but the other party's style was different from Old Ke's. Old Ke's traps, simply put, were more insidious, more ruthless, and more in pursuit of a sure kill. After demonstrating a few simple traps, Old Ke let Xiao Xian try. However, to set a noose, they had to start by weaving straw rope. They had just used up all the straw rope they had brought. How about weaving straw rope? Do you need me to teach you? Weaving straw rope and knotting are very important to a good noose, Old Ke said. Xiao Xian did not answer directly as he was weaving straw rope. Instead, he asked, "Do you know the meaning of my name, Xian?" Old Ke paused in the middle of knotting the rope. He really did not know. People in the tribe named things simply for the sake of simplicity, like Old Ke's own name. Or they named things that they were familiar with, or things that were very memorable, like Mao. Or they named things with onomatopoeia, like Kiki. Old Ke raised his eyelids and waited for Xiao Xian's answer. Xiao Xian swung the straw rope in his hand, shook his fingers, and then pulled it tight. A seemingly simple knot was completed. He laughed. "Don't you think that the word Xian looks like a knot made from straw rope?" He was not lying. In his previous life, when he was born, his grandmother was making straw rope. Later, when she was about to name him, his grandmother found an oracle bone inscriptions ornament at home and immediately took a fancy to the word Xian. His grandmother said, "No matter how I look at it, it looks like the straw rope we make. Let's call it that." In the language of the tribe, the word Xian was very similar to the oracle bone inscriptions, so Xiao Xian's explanation was not suspicious. Old Ke looked at the rope loop that Xiao Xian had finished weaving, and then looked at the knot in Xiao Xian's hands. He had demonstrated it just now, and he had only demonstrated it once. There were a few knots that he had designed himself when he was hunting. They looked simple, but when tied, they were very complicated. If there was a slight deviation, the knot would be useless, and the effect of the trap would be very poor. The cunning prey in the forest would be able to escape as long as they found a loophole. As a person who pursued the path of killing, Old Ke had very strict requirements for knots. But, he had planned to teach him slowly. After all, many people could not make a complete knot even after learning for half a day. He did not expect this kid to be able to do it with just one look. The corner of Old Ke's mouth twitched. He thought to himself, "Is this kid born to learn this trick?" This was really too fucking exciting. I'll continue to update tomorrow, please forgive me. Chapter 68. On a low mountain next to the tribe's training ground, the trees were not thick, but they were dense. The branches were full of green leaves, and the surrounding shrubs and grasses grew fiercely. In this season, they changed almost every day. On both sides of a stone path with sparse weeds that people usually walked on, some annual plants were already waist-high. In places further away, people would not be able to see them if they walked in. Xiao Xian held a stone knife that was half an arm's length in his hand and walked on this seemingly ordinary stone path. It had just rained yesterday, so the grass and leaves were all washed clean. The surroundings were filled with the faint fragrance of unknown flowers. In the distance, there were bursts of roaring sounds coming from the few stone mountains. In comparison, the few short mountains here were much quieter, and there seemed to be no danger. Xiao Xian held the stone knife tightly and looked serious. He did not dare to be careless at all. Old Ke taught Xiao Xian how to set traps, but he only taught him for 2 days before changing the method. According to Old Ke, if you want to catch a bear, you have to think like a bear. If you want to hunt a beast, you have to put yourself in the beast's shoes. If you want to set a better trap and pursue a set of ultimate killing moves, you have to personally experience the mysteries contained in it. In the face of an area full of traps, if you can't see through them and guard against them, in a real hunting ground, you will definitely die. Although Xiao Xian felt that this method was just asking for trouble, he still did what old Ko asked him to do. Again and again, he tried to sense the killing moves that were hidden in the branches, in the cracks of rocks, and in the gaps between leaves, where it was hard for people to notice. To put it simply, here, Xiao Xian himself was the prey. Lifting his foot and walking on this stone path, his 5 fingers tightly holding the stone knife, Xiao Xian glanced ahead. His eyes focused, and he sped up. Buzz! It sounded like a thin beast's tendon vibrating. Coming from the right side of the path, there were at least 4 positions. Xiao Xian didn't stop at all. He continued to run and leaped high into the air. He swung his arm that was holding the saber and the saber's shadow flashed. Suddenly, there was a crisp sound of collision between the stone arrowheads and the stone saber. 2 arrows were blocked by the stone saber while the other 2 were dodged by Xiao Xian. At the same time, Xiao Xian twisted his body slightly. His head, arms, and legs were either extended or folded in a very comical manner. It was impossible to tell what Xiao Xian was going to do based on his posture, but almost at the same time, a few thorns from the other side of the path brushed past Xiao Xian's body. They were fired at the same time as the stone arrowheads, but the sound was softer. Due to the buzzing sound at the beginning, most people would reflexively defend that side of the path, ignoring the more stealthy assassination from the other side. If Xiao Xian didn't use his current posture and made a slight change, it was inevitable that he would be hit somewhere. Tut! 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 The hard thorns shot into the tree trunk on the opposite side. In an instant, more than half of the thorns were buried in. After dodging the first round of attacks, Xiao Xian didn't directly land on the ground. Instead, he grabbed a small branch that extended out from the tree. As if his body weight didn't exist, he nimbly flipped forward and jumped over a thicker branch that extended to the top of the path. He didn't touch a single leaf on the branch at all. After landing, he immediately accelerated. Almost the moment he moved his foot, a finger-thick stone arrowhead was nailed to the place where his foot originally landed. Several times, the stone arrowhead brushed past Xiao Xian's foot and was nailed to the ground. However, Xiao Xian didn't seem to notice and continued to run. Xiao Xian ran and jumped. His route wasn't in a straight line, and there was no pattern to it. When he jumped again, he stepped on a nearby tree trunk and jumped again. 2 consecutive jumps allowed him to dodge the arrowheads that flew back and forth in the air. With a flick of his wrist, 5 stones appeared between his fingers. He shot them towards several bushes in front of him. In the next moment, the places where the stones hit produced the cracking sound of wood breaking. While falling, Xiao Xian reached out and grabbed the tip of a tree branch. He pulled his body to the side at a certain angle. Before landing, he twisted his waist and rolled on the ground to reduce some of the impact. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of the arm-thick stone arrowhead that was already in front of him. A gray-white blade flashed past. Yang Guang didn't have a shiny stone blade under his hand. Instead, like a gray-white lightning bolt that suddenly appeared in the forest, he fiercely chopped down on the stone arrowhead. There was no metallic luster, but anyone who saw the blade could feel the cold sharpness of the blade. It had only been a few breaths of time since he had first stepped onto this path. Xiao Xian stood up and looked back at the path. The path that used to only have some sparse weeds was now covered with stone arrowheads, wooden thorns, stone arrowheads, shaking stakes, and chopped stones. Looking up at a place not far away, Xiao Xian asked, "How is it?" "No." Old Ku sat on a stone and said expressionlessly. Xiao Xian scratched his head, "I think so too." Without Old Ku's reminder, Xiao Xian turned around and went back to get rid of all the traps along the way. Whether they had been set or not, he removed all of them. Otherwise, the people of the tribe would be in trouble. There were several pits on the ground, but they couldn't be seen. Every day, Xiao Xian had to undergo this kind of training. Old Ku set up the traps, and then Xiao Xian would break through them. This kind of masochistic training method might cause nervous breakdown for those with weak self-control. They would be too nervous and become neurotic, looking as if there were traps everywhere. In fact, Xiao Xian had the same feeling for the first 2 days. At that time, even if he returned to the tribe, he would be nervous and have an allergic reaction at the slightest sound. But later, he got better. Old Ku looked down at Xiao Xian, who was removing the traps and lassos, with a gratified expression. At first, he was worried that this kind of training method would have the opposite effect. He planned to train for 5 days before going to talk to Xiao Xian. But he didn't expect that before he even did anything, Xiao Xian had already adjusted. In the beginning, he was covered in injuries. Then, he barely avoided all the lassos and traps. Then, he was able to occasionally cut off the links between some of the lassos. This series of changes only took him 15 days. This was far beyond Old Ku's expectations. But he was afraid that Xiao Xian would be too complacent and arrogant, so he kept a straight face and fiercely criticized him whenever he found a mistake. After removing everything on the path, removing all the lassos that hadn't been triggered, and burying all the pits, Xiao Xian walked to Old Ku's side and sat down to rest, listening to Old Ku's comments. In Old Ku's opinion, the worst way to deal with those traps was to resist them one by one. If you could avoid them, why not? Why waste so much energy to resist them? Of course, according to Old Ku's opinion, when faced with a trap, experts would find the best entry point at the first moment and use the least amount of energy to break the series of traps. For a series of traps, finding the right entry point could directly cut off the links between the traps. Top experts, on the other hand, could use other people's traps as their own. The so-called subduing an enemy without fighting was similar to this. However, Xiao Xian was still far from being able to do that. He couldn't see through the traps set on the path at a glance like Old Ku had said, and he couldn't cut off the links between the traps every time. Every day, after hearing Old Ku's criticisms, Xiao Xian felt that his learning progress was too slow. If Old Ku knew what Xiao Xian was thinking, he would definitely spit on the ground. Other people might not be able to do what he did in 150 days, and he said that it was slow? Part of Old Ku's skills were also learned from the older generation. They focused on the art of setting traps. Some people were more conservative, while others were more sinister. However, they all had one thing in common. They would find the right person to teach them what they had learned in their lifetime, so that this skill could be passed down. Old Ku looked up at the sky, his face filled with nostalgia. Back then, I walked the same path as you, but I did better than you. You were really amazing back then. Xiao Xian didn't deliberately avoid the matter of Old Ku's leg. That would really hurt Old Ku's old self-esteem. Moreover, Old Ku had already let go of it and walked out of his injuries. Why should others sympathize with him? Old Ku didn't need it either. How long did it take you to become a top expert? Xiao Xian asked curiously. No, I wasn't able to reach it even when I was at my peak. Chapter 69. Everyone in the Mountain Foot district knew that Old Ku no longer took stoneware jobs. No one knew what he was doing all day. Early in the morning, he would go out on a wolf with a walking stick, and only come back at night. And Old Ku didn't need to trade for food himself. Xiao Xian had enough food. In Xiao Xian's words, it was called tuition. Old Ku didn't refuse after thinking for a while. One set up, the other set up. Although Old Ku was tired, he was in a good mood. Finally, after leaving the hunting team, he could use what he had learned. Although it was not as good as before, it was enough for Xiao Xian. Every day, seeing Xiao Xian being tortured by those traps, Old Ku laughed happily. He was also trained like this in the past. However, he wasn't as talented as Xiao Xian. He was tortured for so long that he didn't want to think too much about it. Therefore, Old Ku was trying his best to make Xiao Xian feel the mystery of it. Old Ku knew that Xiao Xian was too talented. Maybe after a while, the traps he could set now wouldn't be enough to trap Xiao Xian. If he was still at his peak, if his leg was not broken, he could at least trap Xiao Xian for a while longer. Alas! Old Ku was a little sad, but not as gloomy as he used to be. Why are you sighing? Xiao Xian climbed up from the foot of the mountain with a face full of mud. He sat next to Old Ku. In the past 2 days, Old Ku had taken out a few more difficult ones. Just now, when he was trying to dodge the short arrow that was shot out from the bushes, his face was covered with mud. That lump of mud seemed to know that he would arrive at that position at that exact moment. It appeared just in time, and Xiao Xian had no time to make a move, so he had to take the hit. What if it wasn't mud at that time, but something else? Xiao Xian felt that he still had much to learn. As the party being hunted, if one could see through thousands of traps with a single glance, and as the party being hunted, one could be considered a true expert when one's traps could be set to kill. Although many people in the tribe would think that it was useless to learn these skills, they wouldn't have the time to set up traps in the hunting grounds. Didn't he still have to go personally? However, Xiao Xian felt that learning this might be of great use in the future. After mercilessly criticizing Xiao Xian's performance just now, Old Ku turned his head to look at Xiao Xian's reaction. He saw that Xiao Xian was staring at the area below where the traps had been set, deep in thought. Xiao Xian didn't have the slightest bit of dissatisfaction or resentment because of the criticism just now, so he felt a little relieved. Although Old Ku had been merciless with his words, he was still worried that Xiao Xian would have a problem with him. It was rare to find such a suitable target to teach. If Xiao Xian refused to learn, Old Ku would be so angry that he would vomit blood. Old Ku told Xiao Xian that his performance was better than Xiao Xian's in the past, but that was based on the fact that he had been learning for more than 100 days. However, Xiao Xian hadn't been learning for more than 20 days. Less than 20 days, Xiao Xian was analyzing the various shortcomings of the previous tests based on Old Ku's guidance, while Old Ku looked up at another place on the mountain. There was no one there just now, but now there was someone standing there silently. Ta, the team leader of Xiao Xian's hunting group, the son of the current chief, and one of the few senior totem warriors in the tribe. He was also a candidate for the next chief. Old Ku recognized him at first glance. Old Ku didn't have much contact with Ta. When he was at his peak, Ta was just a junior totem warrior like Mao. When Old Ku was injured and left the hunting group, Ta was still in the hunting group. However, according to the information that Old Ku had heard from some of his old friends, Ta actually didn't pay much attention to traps, especially after he joined the advance group of the hunting team. Among those who were selected by Ta to join the advance group, very few of them were good at setting traps. At most, they were just good at setting traps. That was because they had different views. People with different principles couldn't make plans together. Therefore, Old Ku didn't have a good impression of Ta. And Ta didn't look at Old Ku in a friendly way either. Ta had intended to pull Xiao Xian into the advance group. Of course, he just wanted to give it a try. He thought that since Xiao Xian was protected by the ancestors, he must have been blessed by the ancestors. If he brought Xiao Xian with him, would his hunting results be better every time? Since last year, Ta's hunting results weren't so good. Although in the eyes of the people in the tribe, Ta still brought back big ferocious beasts every time he returned, in fact, many of their tasks were not completed. In terms of merits, they were not as good as the other hunting group. The team leaders of the two hunting groups were both candidates for the next chief. They had been competing with each other for a long time. Seeing that the other team's merits were better than his, Ta had been anxious for a long time. This time, because of the ancestors, he turned his attention to Xiao Xian, who was about the same age as his son. Ta had heard some details about the last hunting trip from Mao. The more he knew, the more satisfied he was with Xiao Xian. At first, he only thought that Xiao Xian was not much better than his son. He thought that Xiao Xian just had better night vision and good luck. But later, after Kiki went to test him, he knew that Xiao Xian improved very fast. Maybe that was the reason why the shaman valued him. Ta didn't tell the others about Xiao Xian's improvement speed. He also asked Kiki and Tua to keep it a secret. Although there was no explicit rule in the tribe that said that newly awakened warriors couldn't join the advance group, generally, those who were selected to join the advance group were experienced warriors who had at least a few years of hunting experience and had the ability to protect themselves. Actually, no one would recruit a newly awakened warrior. The next hunting trip was coming. Ta planned to talk with the shaman in a couple of days. Even if there was no explicit rule, he still had to ask for the permission of the shaman. As for the chief, he was his father. Of course, he would be on Ta's side. When the time came, the chief would not stop him. Originally, he heard that Xiao Xian often came to this area for training, so he wanted to have a look. But he didn't expect that Xiao Xian was just learning how to set traps from the old guy who had quit the hunting team. What a waste of his talent. He was so disappointed. Just when Ta and old Ku were looking at each other with the same unfriendly look, Xiao Xian, who was in deep thought, suddenly said, "Yo." Ta followed the eyes of Xiao Xian and old Ku, and saw the wolf marked by the shaman running up the mountain. It was running so happily that it didn't look like a wolf at all. It was so different from the wolves in the deep forest. Ta didn't like Caesar at all. In his opinion, such a wolf should be eaten as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be a waste of food to keep it. The more he thought about it, the more dissatisfied he was. Ta felt that there were too many things that he didn't agree with Xiao Xian. If it weren't for the protection of the ancestors, even if Xiao Xian could become an excellent middle-level warrior in the future, he might not have allowed him to join the advance group that he was in charge of himself. On the other side, Xiao Xian didn't care about other people's opinions. He was happy with the result of Caesar's training. Caesar ran to Xiao Xian happily and put a palm-sized animal skin bag in his mouth in front of Xiao Xian. Then he squatted beside him and asked for praise. "Well done." Xiao Xian praised him generously. Then he gave Caesar a piece of animal meat that he had prepared beforehand. It was his reward for completing the task. "Xian, what are you doing?" Old Ku was confused. Xiao Xian poured out a few fruits from the animal skin bag and put the bag away. He smiled and said, "There's a saying that, a good dog is the hunter's eyes and ears. I'm trying to make Caesar a good dog. Maybe he can help me in hunting in the future." Ta, who was about to leave with disappointment, stopped when he heard this. He continued to listen. A good dog? Old Ku was still confused. No matter how cunning a fox is, it can't escape the nose of a hunting dog, Xiao Xian said. A hunting dog? Old Ku asked. Ta also pricked up his ears to listen. He was very interested in using the wolf's sense of smell. A hunting dog is a domesticated wolf. Xiao Xian trained Caesar to use his sense of smell to find things. At first, it was clothes and bones. Later, it was fruits. Now, Xiao Xian wanted Caesar to try to find things with a lighter smell. A wolf's nose is good. Xiao Xian smiled. The shaman taught you? That's a good idea, Old Ku said casually. Xiao Xian just said, to Old Ku's words and didn't explain further. In fact, he really wanted the painting in the cave to reappear in the tribe. However, since someone had deliberately covered it, Xiao Xian would not easily reveal it. When he left the cave, Xiao Xian took advantage of the fact that the group of boys were out fishing to paint a layer of stone powder on the painting. The window of the stone room was also blocked with something so that no one would find out. When they rested and were about to go back, Xiao Xian looked at the place where Ta was standing. He sneered and left with Old Ku's toolbox. Chapter 70. Xiao Xian's second hunting trip was about to begin. Although he really wanted to study the new traps set by Old Ku, and felt that he was so close to deciphering them, he did not have much time to spend on traps and lassos. It had been 19 days since the last hunting group left, and it would only take a few days for them to return. Now, Xiao Xian's hunting group was preparing for their return. Xiao Xian's second hunting trip was about to begin, and it was also the third hunting trip for his hunting group this year. According to the old rules, there would be more new warriors in the third hunting trip, and in order to take care of these new warriors, there would naturally be more people to watch over them. According to Xiao Xian's estimation, there would be about 50 more warriors in the hunting group this time. For example, Sai, who used to cause trouble to Xiao Xian, would also join the hunting group this time. Sai's father did not join the previous few hunts this year in order to train his son. Fortunately, there were many people fishing near the mountain foot area, and their food storage was not as good as the people in the mountains. Therefore, they could only target the fish in the water. Even if the energy contained in the fish was not as good as that of the ferocious beasts in the forest, at least they would not starve. Old Ku didn't ask Xiao Xian to go to the training ground anymore. Instead, he wanted to use the next few days to craft a few more stoneware. The stones used were all rewarded by the latter shamans and the chief, so naturally, the stoneware would not be bad. Caesar probably knew that Xiao Xian was going to leave again, so he had been following Xiao Xian closely these days. Sometimes he would even whine and cuddle with Xiao Xian like a spoiled child. Xiao Xian did not know if it was his illusion, but he felt that Caesar seemed to have grown bigger and stronger after eating ferocious beast meat for 10 days. Caesar liked the ferocious beast meat that Xiao Xian brought back, and his favorite was the thorn black wind meat. After eating it, he did not even want to eat fish anymore, because he had become picky. There was still a lot of ferocious beast meat left in the wooden house. Xiao Xian took most of it to Old Ku's house. It was enough for Old Ku and Caesar to eat for 10 days. Xiao Xian did not have to worry about them going hungry when he went hunting. While he was talking with Old Ku about what kind of traps to use on ferocious beasts, Xiao Xian heard someone calling his name from outside. Old Ku nodded outside, and signaled Xiao Xian to go outside. He lifted the curtain and went out. He saw Tua standing outside, and Kiki was not with him. "I went to your house and didn't see anyone. You are here." Tua waved to Xiao Xian, "The shaman is looking for you." Old Ku's eyelids twitched, and he stopped polishing. Since the shaman was looking for him, he could not delay. Xiao Xian greeted Old Ku and asked Caesar to go inside. He followed Tua up the mountain. He was about to go hunting. Why was the shaman looking for him now? It was still the same stone house where he had talked with Xiao Xian after paying respects to the ancestors. It was the shaman's guest house, and he usually talked there. Big Head Ta was standing outside the stone house. When he saw Xiao Xian, he showed a rare smile. Tua did not follow him in. Only the shaman was in the house, sitting on a straw mat with a faint smile. He looked amiable, but no one could tell what he was thinking. Seeing Xiao Xian come in, the shaman pointed at another straw mat in front of him, and signaled Xiao Xian to sit down and talk. Xiao Xian bowed and sat down with his legs crossed, waiting for the shaman to ask him questions. The shaman looked at Xiao Xian quietly, and was not in a hurry to ask. Xiao Xian did not say anything either. He was not in a hurry, and could wait. After a while, the smile on the shaman's face deepened. He said slowly, "Let me see your totem patterns." Xiao Xian was mentally prepared when he saw Ta at the door, so he was not surprised at all. He activated the totem power in his body, and a clear totem pattern appeared on his face. At the same time, a flame pattern appeared on his arm, which was not covered. It went over his shoulder and spread to more than the length of his palm. Looking at the totem pattern on Xiao Xian's arm, the shaman nodded, "You are indeed very good. No wonder Ta wants to transfer you to his hunting group." Advance group. Xiao Xian had guessed it before. But because he had heard Lang Jie and the others say that it was very difficult to be in the advance group, Xiao Xian thought that a new warrior like himself who had just awakened this year would not be chosen. But it turned out to be true. What was the difference between the advance group and other hunting groups? Xiao Xian did not know. Only those who were in the advance group would know about their hunting activities. Those who were not in the advance group would not know. However, according to Lang Jie and the others' gossip, the advance group had their own extra tasks. No matter what, it was undeniable that the advance group would encounter more troubles. What happened to the hunting group alone was enough to annoy Xiao Xian. He knew himself well. Although he was improving faster than others, he was still a junior totem warrior who had just awakened. Wasn't Ta afraid that he would be a burden? What were these people thinking? I don't think I have that kind of ability. Xiao Xian said. That's true. Normally, people who join the advance group are intermediate totem warriors, or are about to become intermediate totem warriors. You are still too early. But Ta thinks highly of your ability, so he came to me personally to propose to you. He wants you to join the advance group. The shaman said. Thinks highly of my ability? What ability? Xiao Xian was confused, but soon he knew the answer. What did people in the tribe envy Xiao Xian the most? The protection of the ancestors. Seeing that Xiao Xian was silent and embarrassed, the shaman continued, Don't worry. If you don't want to go, no one can force you. As for Ta, I will talk to him. When he was about to refuse, Xiao Xian suddenly thought of something. He paused and asked, Will people in the advance group get more benefits? Xiao Xian found that the tribe was actually more inclined towards the elite strategy. In addition to some benefits on the surface, the more capable the elites of the tribe were, the more preferential treatment they would receive, and the tribe would be willing to provide them with more help. Benefits? Yes, like Tua and the others, they have better herbs. Hearing Xiao Xian's words, the shaman smiled, Of course. Every warrior in the advance group must have a medicine pack like that every time they go hunting. It can further stimulate the warrior's healing ability, and make their wounds heal faster. Will they give out the medicine packs in advance? Xiao Xian asked. They will be given out the day before the departure. The medicine came from the shaman, and only the shaman knew how to make that kind of medicine. Xiao Xian sat up straight and said seriously, It's my honor to be valued by the team leader. Of course I'm happy to join the advance group. There's no reason for me to refuse. The shaman was speechless. Then why did you look embarrassed just now? It's just. Xiao Xian showed an embarrassed expression, Can I change the medicine? Change the medicine? When you get injured while hunting outside, the speed of healing is very important. Without that kind of medicine, you will be more exposed to danger. The shaman advised. I know. Can I change it? The shaman was helpless. He had never seen anyone at such a young age bargaining with him. Of course, the shaman had already experienced Xiao Xian's shamelessness. Therefore, although he was surprised by Xiao Xian's suggestion, he was not too surprised. What do you want? The shaman asked in the same gentle tone as before. Recuperation medicine. Do you have any here? Xiao Xian asked. He was asking for medicine for old Ku. From the time when old Ku set the trap, he could see that old Ku was weak. His body was deteriorating quickly, and he often stayed in the house to make stoneware. It was inevitable that he would have some occupational diseases. Healthy warriors could certainly alleviate and cure such diseases with their strong bodies, but old Ku could not. Xiao Xian often heard old Ku's suppressed coughs. Old Ku spent most of his time in the house making stoneware every year. After losing a leg, his strength had decreased a lot. In addition, the food he exchanged for stoneware was mostly low-level beast meat. Old Ku was a mid-level totemic warrior, and the energy contained in low-level beast meat could not fully satisfy his body's needs. Over time, the strong mid-level totemic warrior's body deteriorated, and he seemed to be aging very quickly. Xiao Xian could now go out to hunt, so he did not have to worry about beast meat. However, after so many years of accumulated injuries, he needed medicine to recuperate. Ordinary medicine might not work. Xiao Xian wanted to get some better medicine from the shaman, but the tribe usually reserved better things for the elites. After all, they were rare and hard to find. Now that there was such an opportunity, Xiao Xian had already proposed it. Even if he refused this time, he would not be able to avoid it next time. This chief candidate was not someone who would give up easily. Tower wanted to take advantage of the ancestors' protection. Xiao Xian knew that after he joined, even if he could not help, Tower would try his best to keep him safe. Moreover, Xiao Xian also knew that if the hunting results did not meet Tower's standards, he would be kicked back to the hunting group again. He did not know when he would be able to join the advance group again. However, Old Ku's health was getting worse and worse. This was a rare opportunity. The shaman was talking to Xiao Xian in the stone house, while Tower was standing not far away from the stone house. He could not hear the conversation in the house, but he knew that if Xiao Xian refused to join, the shaman would definitely reject his proposal. After a while, Xiao Xian came out with an animal skin bag in his hand and left. Tower walked into the house. He chose to join, said the shaman. Tower was delighted. He raised his head and wanted to thank the shaman, but he met the shaman's old eyes. The shaman's eyes looked the same as before, but Tower felt a great psychological pressure. He knew that the shaman was angry, and this anger was directed at him. Tower did not dare to continue to look at the shaman. He lowered his head and bowed respectfully to the shaman. "Don't worry, I will bring him back safely." The shaman did not say anything. He just waved his hand and let Tower leave. After leaving the stone house, Tower wiped the sweat on his forehead. Chapter 71. The shaman gave Xiao Xian a bag of herbal medicine for recuperation, but did not apply the medicine for wounds. He asked Xiao Xian to ask Ta for it the day before the hunting trip. The bag was not big, and some of the herbs were hard to find. Therefore, the medicine for Xiao Xian was not much. According to the shaman, it was enough for 10 days. If he could return safely, even if he was kicked back to his original hunting group, he could still look for opportunities in the future. Even if he could not join the advance group, he could still try to exchange some medicine with the shaman. However, he decided to check the effect of the medicine first. He wondered if Old Ku would feel better after taking the medicine. Xiao Xian thought. The hunting group came back on the 21st day. 3 people were seriously injured, and 1 was missing. The missing person was dead, and even his bones could not be found. It seemed that the hunting group was in big trouble this time. However, the game brought back by the hunting group still made everyone excited. Except for the families of the wounded and the dead, the families of the other warriors were all shouting excitedly. At least, they would not have to worry about food for the next 20 days. In the evening, Tua came to Xiao Xian's cabin and sent him a message. "Xian, find some time tomorrow to go to the team leader to get the things. We will leave the day after tomorrow." "Thank you, I got it." Tua did not enter the cabin. He still had to inform the people who were patrolling. Xiao Xian looked out of the window. Night Swallow had become restless and active. People in the Mountain Foot district had all returned to their own houses. But it was different from the previous days. This time, there were children in the Mountain Foot district who would participate in the first hunting trip in their lives. It was inevitable that they would be excited. They trained during the day, and when they could not sleep at night, they would roar to vent their excitement. Closing the window, Xiao Xian packed up the few stone arrowheads that he had made today. He heard that the advance group would hunt in farther places, where it was more dangerous. But he did not know what was the difference between them and the other hunting groups. Were the ferocious beasts more difficult to deal with? Or was it something else? Thinking about the game brought back by the advance group, he could not find anything special. The next day, Xiao Xian went up the mountain to look for Ta. He met many people from the advance group. Because they were not informed in advance, the advance group was very surprised when they learned that Xiao Xian was going to hunt with them this time. There were also a lot of suspicious protesters, but they were all suppressed by Tower. After taking the medicine, Xiao Xian was left behind to get to know the other warriors of the advance group. However, he didn't have much to say to them, so they still treated Xiao Xian as a child. In terms of strength, Xiao Xian was indeed the weakest, so in the face of their doubtful and contemptuous gazes, Xiao Xian only smiled and did not explain. On the day the hunting team departed, Xiao Xian sent Caesar to Old Ke's place. Facing Old Ke's worried gaze, Xiao Xian clenched his fists. "Don't worry." Hearing Xiao Xian's words, Old Ke's heart skipped a beat, and he became even more worried. Last time, this kid also said, "Don't worry," before hunting, and what happened? First, he encountered the thorn-black wind, and then he got lost in the cave. It was said that Mai and the others were so worried that their faces turned pale. Not to mention that he was going with the advance group this time. Would he encounter more trouble? Don't worry. Don't worry my ass. Looking at Xiao Xian's back as he carried the equipment up the mountain, Old Ke sat at the door, worried. Just like last time, they had to gather and sing a song before hunting. Xiao Xian learned the hunting song seriously after he came back, and this time he did not make up the numbers. While singing the hunting song, the shaman glanced at Xiao Xian, and was satisfied that this kid was not pretending like last time. However, this time, the shaman did not look at him, but Xiao Xian attracted more people's attention. All the people present stood together in groups. Last time, Xiao Xian stood with Lang Jie, but this time, he stood with Tua, Kiki, and the others. The other warriors in the hunting group naturally knew who Tua and Kiki were, and that was why they were so shocked. That was the advance group. Did Xian go there to seek death? How could the team leader agree? Of course, more people were jealous, especially the new warriors in the hunting group this time. They were awakened at the same time as Xiao Xian. When they were still training, Xiao Xian had already joined the hunting group. When they finally joined the hunting group, they found that Xiao Xian was already standing with the advance group. They were so shocked that their jaws almost dropped. Even Mao, who was recognized as the most talented among the new awakened warriors this year, was not brought in by his own father. What did Xiao Xian do? The warriors could not figure out what the team leader was thinking, but it did not stop him from teaching the kid a lesson. For example, Sai was scolded by his father again. Hoodlum did not join the hunting group this time. Xiao Xian broke several of Hoodlum's ribs when he came back from the last hunting trip. Hoodlum recuperated at home for nearly 10 days, and was beaten by Mao again when he went out. Xiao Xian was still worried that Hoodlum's family would make trouble for Old Ke, so he did not beat him too hard. But Mao had his father and grandpa to back him up, so he beat Hoodlum even harder. Hoodlum was beaten down again before he had fully recovered. Now he was still recuperating at home, so he could not join the hunting group. Everyone knew that Hoodlum was in trouble, so they did not interfere, and just let Xiao Xian and Mao beat him up. The team leader also ordered Hoodlum and his father to stay at home and reflect on their mistakes. Even a healthy warrior might not be able to go hunting with the team every time. Every time, there were rules and quotas for who could go and who could not go. Every time, the team leaders would report it to the team leaders, and then the team leaders would make the final decision. If they could not pass the team leader's final review, then they should just stay at home. What? Almost out of food? Even if there is no food, you better stay at home and starve. If you don't starve, you don't learn from your mistakes. As the team leader, Ta already knew that the results of his hunting group were not as good as those of the other hunting group. Naturally, he would not allow anyone to be a hindrance and a joke. This year's hunting group, Ta made an example of Hoodlum and his father. With Hoodlum as an example, the new warriors would be more obedient this time. As they walked down the path of glory, the crowds on both sides were very excited, especially those women who had not yet awakened, but whose husbands and children were with the hunting group. They were shouting as if their lives depended on it. Xiao Xian looked over there and thought that those women were probably competing with each other to see who had the loudest voice. They were shouting, and even started fighting. They had fully inherited the tribe's tradition of being barbaric and valiant, and solving any conflict by force. When they got close to the mountain foot area, Xiao Xian also saw old Ku, who was riding a wolf. He waved to him, and then left with the hunting group. With the experience from last time, it was not difficult for them to deal with it. After they got off the path of glory, they began to speed up. The farther they were from the tribe's residential area, the faster they ran. But no one was left behind. Obviously, the training of those new warriors since their awakening was not in vain. After they got out of the tribe's patrol area, Ta signaled everyone to stop before they entered the forest, and each group could do a little rest. Xiao Xian was still thinking about what he should do later, but after listening to Ta for a while, he realized that he had nothing to do at all. Everyone else had been assigned tasks, and when the advance group entered the forest, they had already arranged who would be in charge of which direction. Xiao Xian only had one thing to do, and that was to stay by Ta's side. Xiao Xian accepted that he was not as strong as others. When the others in the hunting group laughed at him for needing protection, Xiao Xian just glanced at them and did not refute. Tua kicked those who were laughing. The team leader went to talk with the team leaders of other hunting groups, so he did not pay attention to them. These guys in the hunting group became bold again, and if he did not stop them, they would go even further. Don't mind them. With your ability, maybe you can surpass them in 10 years. Tua comforted him. It's okay. Xiao Xian did not look at those who were still laughing, but turned to ask Tua, will the advance group hunt more ferocious beasts? Tua heard this and paused, then said meaningfully, who told you that we must hunt wild beasts and ferocious beasts? Chapter 72. If they didn't hunt beasts and ferocious beasts, what else could they hunt? Xiao Xian was full of doubts, but before Xiao Xian could ask more questions, Ta had already walked over. Since they were the advance group, they had to set off earlier than the other groups to explore the way. All right, let's go. Ta called out to the others. When they were about to set off, Ta turned around and looked at Xiao Xian, can you keep up with us? It's not like when you were with Mai and the others. Don't force yourself if you can't. Ta meant that the advance group would be faster. If Xiao Xian couldn't keep up with them, Ta might give him a hand. No, I'll try it myself. Xiao Xian had never seen the advance group speed. Although he believed he could do it, he couldn't be too confident. What if he couldn't keep up with them? If he overestimated himself, he would be the one to suffer. Hearing this, Ta didn't say anything more. He made a gesture to the other group leaders, and then led the advance group into the forest. In the blink of an eye, the 40 figures had disappeared in the green forest. Xiao Xian finally understood what Ta meant by, not as fast as the other groups. This was the difference between a motorcycle at full power and an ordinary electric car. He barely had time to pay attention to the surroundings. Fortunately, Xiao Xian had improved quickly. Compared to when he had just awakened his power, his speed had improved a lot. Otherwise, he might not have been able to keep up with the advance group. In order to check the general situation of this area in the shortest time possible, and to check if there were any ferocious beasts or other abnormal factors that were beyond the ability of the hunting group, every member of the advance group went to the destination they had arranged beforehand. Therefore, the group of 40 people went in at the same time, and soon disappeared. Xiao Xian could only see Ta, who was leading him, and another warrior, Asua, who was about the same age as Tua and Kiki. Except for Xiao Xian, the others were exploring in groups of 2. They must have been familiar with the area they were going to explore. After running for a while, Ta stopped. This was their rendezvous point. Later, the warriors who had been scattered to investigate would come here. Asua, you stay here and keep an eye on him. I'll go check it out. Ta left after saying that. The reason why Xiao Xian was able to keep up with them was that Ta slowed down. He asked Asua to keep an eye on Xiao Xian in case they encountered any ferocious beasts. Ta seized the time to explore the planned area. Asua was familiar with Tua, but he was not optimistic about Xiao Xian. Before entering the forest, he was one of the people who laughed at Xiao Xian. What could a newly awakened warrior do? According to the team leader, it seemed that it was just a lucky charm. It was completely a decoration and had to be protected at all times. Regarding this, Asua despised him and hoped that this child would not be a burden like Hoodlum. After Tower left, Asua paid attention to his surroundings. Ever since they entered the mountain, he had not even looked at Xiao Xian. The surroundings were very quiet, except for the cries of birds and beasts. Asua thought that Xiao Xian would ask him some questions out of curiosity. However, after waiting for a long time, Asua did not hear anything from the person behind him. When he first joined the team, he had been curious for a long time. He had never met anyone who could be as calm as Xiao Xian. Asua could not help but pretend to check the surroundings. He quickly glanced back, and then immediately turned back. He was stunned, and then turned back again to look at Xiao Xian. Although Ta had not used his full strength since they entered the forest, his speed was still much faster than the other hunting groups. As a junior warrior who had just awakened his power this year, it was not easy for him to keep up with the others without any help. When Asua joined the advance group for the first time, he did not ask for any help either. However, he still gasped for breath for a long time after following them all the way here. It was only when the others gathered together that he finally felt better. However, now Xiao Xian was just a little short of breath. He was not even sweating. He stood there and looked around vigilantly, as if following them was nothing. Was he really a newly awakened junior warrior? Or did he come out of the mountain cave? Aren't you tired? Asua was very surprised. Seeing Asua's strange look, Xiao Xian answered, "I'm okay." Xiao Xian was indeed gasping for breath, but he recovered quickly. The sweat on his body was also dried by the wind. Feeling the energy in his body quickly replenishing, Xiao Xian could even use his ability to pay attention to the surroundings. After looking at him carefully for a while, Asua found that this kid was not pretending. How strange. Seeing that Xiao Xian had no intention to ask, Asua felt bored. He used to follow Ta to explore, so why would he stay here? This place was relatively safe, so it was okay to talk. Aren't you curious about what we are going to do? Asua asked. You won't tell me even if I ask. Xiao Xian had asked before, but Ta, Tua, Kiki, and the others did not answer directly. They only told him, "You'll know when the time comes." That's because we are not separated from the other teams. When the time comes, of course we won't tell you. What if we tell you and you tell others? The shaman doesn't want too many people to know. But now, I can tell you if you want to know. Asua said proudly. He saw that Xiao Xian seemed to have some ability, so his attitude was a little better. Once his attitude was good, his old habits would resurface. What he liked most was to answer all kinds of questions about the advance group to the newcomers. It gave him a sense of pride, especially when he saw the shocked expression on the newcomers' faces, which made him feel refreshed. Our team has a task, and it's given by the shaman. Asua said. To them, this was an extremely high honor. Moreover, in the process, they were also the beneficiaries. We can eat things that the others in the tribe can't. Moreover, we can become stronger than others in the future. After listening to Asua's bragging for a while, Xiao Xian could not help but interrupt, so what is the task? Asua, who was immersed in his own pride, was a little unhappy to be interrupted. He snorted, do you think the herbs used in the tribe can be found easily? Herbs. After receiving the bag of herbs from the shaman, Xiao Xian also found that although he did not know what the original herbs were, he could distinguish the smell of some of them. However, There were many kinds of herbs that he had never encountered before, even when he was hunting with the advance group. So, you've been hunting for plants? Not all of them. Asoa said. Were they really plants? Xiao Xian was shocked. How could they use the words hunting and killing to find herbs? What kind of plants were they? While they were talking, Xiao Xian heard a whistling sound coming from afar. Then, whistling sounds came from other directions one after another. Some were closer, some were farther, and some were more vague. If you didn't pay attention, you wouldn't be able to hear it at all. After the whistling stopped, people began to gather here. Ta was the last one to arrive. He had to go back to deliver the message to the advance group. If he was too far away, the others would not be able to hear it. After a short rest, Ta led the others to continue their journey. Before, they were the advance group, but after this, they became the tribe's herb hunting team, to complete the task assigned by the shaman. Chapter 73. The hunting group sped up again, and they didn't take the route that Xiao Xian knew. They traveled at a speed that was 2 to 3 times faster than the other hunting groups. It was a long journey, and they only took a short break to eat, and then continued their journey. In the evening, they spent the night in a cave, which was also the resting place of Ta and the others when they were hunting. On the first day, Xiao Xian didn't get used to the new environment. Even though he had better endurance and speed than his peers, he was only a junior totem warrior who had just awakened this year. In the original advance group, the weakest one was only one step away from becoming a middle-level warrior. Xiao Xian was not good enough compared with them. Therefore, when they finally arrived at the cave on the first night, Xiao Xian was exhausted. He lay there, unable to lift his legs. His muscles were twitching, and his mind was a little muddled. The other members were tired, too, but they were used to it. They weren't as tired as Xiao Xian. Seeing Xiao Xian like this, they all thought that this kid finally realized the gap between them. Not everyone could join the advance group. Even if the weaker ones tried their best to get in, they still couldn't keep up. However, Xiao Xian was already very good to be able to keep up on the first day. Therefore, some people in the advance group had a better impression of Xiao Xian. In their eyes, Xiao Xian was just a kid, and the tribe was always more tolerant to kids. Ta and the others, who were more powerful in the advance group, discussed that they would take turns to carry Xiao Xian tomorrow. After all, Xiao Xian wouldn't be able to keep running tomorrow. But the next day, when the others got up, they found that Xiao Xian, who was still half dead last night and couldn't even move his toes, was now alive and kicking, as if nothing had happened to him. Xiao Xian didn't need Ta and the others to carry him, and he kept up with them in high spirits. Almost everyone in the advance group showed the same expression. Damn, didn't that kid come out of the cave? What did he eat to grow up? Wild animals? Ferocious beasts? Or was it a beast king? That was impossible. The food distributed in the underground cave was all low-energy meat and plant tubers. How could it grow like this? Thinking about it, he couldn't figure it out. No matter how he thought about it, he still couldn't figure it out. Could it be that he was really protected by the ancestors? Therefore, the next day, the advance group kept glancing at Xiao Xian while they were on their way. Then, they glanced at him again after a while. TSK, looking at that brat's spirited appearance, he really wasn't pretending. Unlike other hunting groups, who would hunt in one foothold and then move on to the next foothold, Ta's hunting group was on a continuous journey. After spending the night in the first cave, they would continue the journey the next day. Sometimes, they had to climb over the mountains, over the dangerous peaks covered with white snow. Sometimes, they had to take a detour, passing through dangerous areas such as swamps and asphalt pits. Xiao Xian saw a lot of unknown ferocious beasts. Some were huge and ferocious, and some were colorful giant snakes. Any one of them would attract the attention of the people in the tribe. However, the group didn't stop. Even if they killed ferocious beasts, they didn't bring them back. As long as they had enough food, they would just leave the rest behind. They didn't want to burden themselves. Hurrying on, and hunting again. They did the same thing every day. The huge consumption of physical strength also meant that they needed more energy, and the meat of high-level ferocious beasts was the best supplement. The people in the advance group were worried that Xiao Xian wouldn't be able to absorb the energy and would feel sleepy after eating the meat of high-level ferocious beasts. But it turned out that they thought too much. After hunting a thorn black wind, Xiao Xian had already gotten used to eating meat of that level. He had already adapted to the energy in the meat. Even if the level of the ferocious beast was higher, Xiao Xian would still be able to absorb the energy. As a junior warrior who had just awakened this year, he ate as much as the others, and recovered faster than anyone else. Seeing Xiao Xian's performance, the people in the advance group were stunned at first, then slightly surprised, and then numb. In the end, no one dared to laugh at Xiao Xian anymore. Sure enough, those who could be recruited by the team leader in advance were not ordinary people. After walking like this for 5 days, Xiao Xian followed the hunting group up a mountain, and rested in a cave there. They had already arrived at their destination. However, Xiao Xian couldn't tell what was different, except for a strange feeling. After a night's rest, Xiao Xian was woken up in the morning. He took his equipment, and followed Ta and the others out. They continued to climb up the mountain, and stood on top of a cliff. Yang Guang gradually came out. Facing the morning sun, Xiao Xian stood beside the cliff. As far as the eye could see, it was endless green. There were also some other colors, but 99% of them were dark or light green. This was the destination of their trip, a kingdom of plants. And the sun rose from the border between this endless kingdom of plants and the sky. The cold air warmed up again. Xiao Xian could clearly feel that everything on this land was waking up. Crack! 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 In the green kingdom of plants, the pillar-shaped plants that stood like tall buildings made cracking sounds, like the pressing of heavy planks. Occasionally, some creaking sounds could be heard, like the sound of a giant wooden boat swaying in the waves. They were going to fly from one side of the mountain to the green area on the other side. When the fleet of airplanes glided over their heads, Xiao Xian could still see the web-like veins of their wings. They were like gliders. Let's go! The people of the advance group skillfully jumped off the mountain wall and landed on a giant dragonfly when they fell. Before Xiao Xian could move, Ta lifted him up and jumped on the back of a slightly larger dragonfly. It was the first time in his life that he had experienced a giant dragonfly glider. Chapter 74. These giant dragonflies seemed to have a good temper, otherwise they would not have let the advance group hitch a ride. Judging from the style of the advance group, this was not the first time they had used this method to go down the mountain, and these giant dragonflies might have some impression of them. But according to Ta, as long as they did not provoke them or attack them, they would not mind hitching a ride and were willing to give them a ride. Looking down from the backs of the dragonflies, the forest below looked very peaceful. Of course, this was just the surface. The land below was even more dangerous than the forest they had passed through on their last hunting route. The law of the jungle also applied here. In some places where trees were too dense, there would be a lot of competition for nutrients. Xiao Xian occasionally saw some withered trees. These trees were very large and looked like they had hundreds of years of history. Their roots were intertwined. However, such a tree was withered. There was no wormhole, and the trunk was not cracked. But Ta told Xiao Xian that it had been killed by the cooperation of the surrounding trees. The battle of the plants could be on the ground, or it could be under the ground. If they dug the ground, they would see that the withered trees' underground roots had all been cut off by the roots of the surrounding trees. Attention, we need to get ready to go down. Ta reminded Xiao Xian. They could not follow the group of dragonflies all the time. Their destinations were different. After riding for a while, they parted ways. The swarm of dragonflies was very large. The 40 or so people of the advance group were not all gathered together. Even if the dragonflies were next to each other in the beginning, as the swarm of dragonflies flew and changed their formation, they soon disappeared. Jump! Xiao Xian did not use any strength at all. He was carried by Ta and jumped down. Ta chose to land on a plant that stood there like a tall building. He fell on a huge leaf near the top. The leaf cushioned some of the force, and Ta jumped down when the group of dragonflies flew a little lower, so he did not get hurt. After landing safely, Xiao Xian was put down. The leaf under their feet was a little cold and not smooth. In other places in the air, the team members found suitable landing points one after another and jumped down. Let's go. Ta asked Xiao Xian to follow them. This time, he didn't carry Xiao Xian, but he had promised the shaman that he would bring Xiao Xian back safely, so he had to keep an eye on him. Be alert and react quickly, Tower said. Yes. Xiao Xian followed Tower and jumped from the top leaf to the bottom leaf. He had to be careful not to roll down the leaf. Only the top 1/3 of the plant had leaves. Further down, there was only the thick stem. Ta deliberately slowed down, and Xiao Xian followed him to slide down along the stem. The trees near the ground were not as bright as above. The plants were too dense, and the branches blocked too much of Yang Guang. Only a small part of the light could be seen through the gaps. It was obviously cooler down there, but the light was enough for Xiao Xian to see his surroundings. Here, Xiao Xian had a feeling that he had become smaller, or the world had become bigger. The last time he went out hunting, he had seen many ancient trees and large ferocious beasts, but he didn't feel as small as he did now. Even the mushroom was as big as a wooden house. How could he not feel small? Close to the roots of the tall plant near the ground, Ta blew a whistle to summon the others who had landed. The whistle was deeper, not as loud as the whistles of other hunting groups. It was specially used in this place. A slight sound came from not far away. It was hard to hear it if one didn't listen carefully. Xiao Xian tilted his head to look and saw a few thin vines that looked like straw ropes extending quickly towards them. Xiao Xian and Tower both stood in the direction of the vines, but Xiao Xian felt that the vines seemed to be targeting him. Whoosh! A small stone knife was nailed to the ground, and cut off the tip of the vines that were extending towards them. The vines that were cut off immediately stopped extending, and quickly shrank back, as if they were scared. Tower went over and took back the stone knife, and said to Xiao Xian, "Don't treat them as dead things, or you will be the one to die. Besides, many of them know how to avoid the strong. You are the weakest in our group." Sure enough, he had become a target again. The ferocious beasts in the forest would attack the cubs of other races when they had the chance. But here, even the plants knew how to find the weak ones, and couldn't handle the strong ones. Xiao Xian had heard in his last life that plants also had 5 senses, including sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. It was just that many people didn't pay attention to it. But now, Xiao Xian had a deep understanding of the 5 senses of these plants. Soon, the other warriors who had landed in other places also gathered here. After counting the number of people, they continued to set off. But this time, they were divided into 2 groups, and went in 2 directions to search for the tasks assigned by the shaman. In this way, there were only 20 people in Xiao Xian's group. It was impossible for the people in the advance group to be familiar with every inch of this vast green area, but they could tell the direction. As long as they had the Yang Guang, they wouldn't get lost. Their route was basically the same. In the forest, they could hear the chirping of birds, insects, and all kinds of sounds made by some plants. Sometimes, it sounded like someone was knocking on a door, and the sound echoed in the forest. Sometimes, the sound made Xiao Xian think of the sound made by the turning of the iron head of a mast. Running in the forest with Tower and the others, Xiao Xian saw all kinds of plants and weapons. One moment, it was quiet and peaceful, and the next moment, it became a bloody storm. Xiao Xian once saw a plant whose smooth leaves could be turned into saws or knives in an instant. It cut up the animals or other plants around it, and then buried them in the ground around it to increase its nutrition. There were also some carnivorous plants. Some of them were similar to the caterpillars and nepenthes he had seen in his previous life, and some were more ferocious, and belonged to the aggressive type. Generally, the people in the advance group would avoid them, because they were not to be trifled with. Let's take a rest. Tua and Kiki go get some water. After running for half a day, Tower said to Xiao Xian. What the shaman was looking for was not here. They had to run for a while to find it. There was no river around, not even a stream. While Xiao Xian was puzzled, he saw Tua and Kiki come to a plant with thick leaves, and cut the surface of the stem with a stone knife. It took several cuts to make a crack. The wall was too thick to be cut open with only one cut, and even if the crack was cut open, it would soon close up. Clear green liquid flowed out from the slit, bringing with it a faint sweet smell. Tua and Kiki took the water bottle and collected the liquid. The liquid would also attract other insects, so except for Tua, Kiki, and Xiao Xian who went to get water, the others were on guard around. They would kill any insects that came. Some of them were on guard against the sky, and some were on guard against the other directions of the forest. Only 2 people were left to get water. Xian, throw the water bottle to me. Tua, who was getting water, said. Tua didn't let Xiao Xian get close to the plant, so Xiao Xian stood about 10 meters away. Hearing Tuo's words, Xiao Xian threw the empty gourd to him. When it was filled with water, Tua threw the gourd to him, and continued to ask the next team member to throw the water bottle. The green liquid attracted a lot of insects, all of which were relatively large. A random beetle was nearly 1 meter long. Hurry up! Tower urged them. There was a swarm of insects flying towards them from afar. With only 20 people, they could not fight against those insects. When the last water bottle was taken, the insects were about 200 meters away, enough for them to leave. Let's go. After getting the water, they had to leave immediately. What are those? Xiao Xian asked, and they were standing on a leaf to take a rest after leaving a certain distance. We call them Ripper. The plant we just took water from can recover quickly after we get the water. The cut will be healed, and the water will be reabsorbed by it. Then it will protect itself with a thick wall. Many insects can't do anything to it, or they will leave when they can't smell it. But Ripper is different. Most of the plants will die if they encounter a Ripper, Tua said. The insect called Ripper, as its name suggested, had blade-like forelimbs for tearing and cutting. The Ripper was a carnivore. It could suck the juice of plants, and also the blood of animals. It often flew in groups. The people in the advance group did not want to fight with the Ripper. First of all, the Ripper's swarm was too lethal. Second of all, the insects were too smelly. If they got the smell, they might not be able to get rid of it by the time they returned from hunting. Chapter 75. The liquid in the gourd was refreshing and comfortable. It seemed to dispel the tiredness from the continuous running. His mind was much clearer, and his whole body was so comfortable that even his bones were shaking. How is it? Do you feel good? Asua threw a fruit to Xiao Xian. This is good too. Xiao Xian didn't know which plants were edible and which weren't, so he didn't take any action. Just now, when he left the water point, he noticed that Asua and the others took a detour. It seemed like they were going to pick some fruits. These are all good stuff. Asua said, I'm not boasting. After eating these, we'll improve faster. There's a saying in the advance group. Lowering his voice, Asua continued, only those who have been in the advance group can become senior totem warriors. Every senior totem warrior in the tribe has been in the advance group at some point. Most of the plants here were more than 100 years old. Some of the fruits and plant juices had a certain degree of cleansing effect on the human body. Even if the warriors could not describe the specific feeling, they could feel the benefits that the things they ate brought to them. "Can't we take some back to the tribe?" Xiao Xian asked. "It's not that easy." Asua said with a bitter face, "I want to take some back for my brother and sister, but I can't." It wasn't that the advance group led by the previous team leaders had never tried this before, but using iced food, digging out the roots, and other methods didn't work. As long as they left this place, after a day or two, the things they brought out would rot and deteriorate. Drying them? Not everything could be done in this way. So far, there are very few plants that can be taken out. The shaman's task includes them. But some of them are not easy to find. It depends on the time. Flowers, fruits, and so on. If you miss them, you have to wait for another year. For some plants, even if you wait for a lifetime, you may not see them again. You have to find another one. Xiao Xian was silent. It seemed that some of the plants here only bore fruit after hundreds of years, or they had to be hundreds of years old to be effective. But most of the plants died immediately after leaving this land. They couldn't survive in other places. Therefore, people might have thought of planting plants before, but it might not be effective. Until now, the tribe could only take the initiative to come to this place that was both a dangerous and a treasure land. The glory of the advance group was to serve the tribe. The medicine used by the tribesmen when they were sick, and the medicine used by the shaman to treat the wounded were all found and brought back by the advance group. No one could deny their contribution. Other than the glory, joining the advance party would also give the warriors a chance to taste a lot of medicinal plants that could not be taken away. It would also be beneficial to the warriors' development and improvement. Therefore, some people who had joined the advance group but left due to injuries or old age would tell their children and grandchildren to work hard and strive to join the advance group. They knew that these people would become stronger in the future, and they were the elites with the most potential for development in the entire tribe. However, the internal rule in the tribe was that the advance group was decided by the team leader. Generally speaking, the shaman would not ask about it. Only special cases like Xiao Xian would attract the shaman's attention. Most of the time, the team leaders would choose people who were on good terms with them. As long as they were strong enough, they would be able to pull them in. These people were also the strong supporters of the team leaders when they fought for the chief's position. After the selected people joined the advance group and felt the benefits, who would want to give up their position and quit? No one wanted to. If one more person joined the advance group, the others might be kicked out. Even if the hunting group was ruled by the team leader alone, the ancestors had set the rule that the number of warriors in the advance group could not exceed 1/5 of the total number of warriors in the hunting group. Maybe the team leaders of the previous generation had learned their lesson, so they worked together with the chief and the shaman to set this rule. Thinking about this, Xiao Xian understood why some people in the advance group looked at him with such a subtle expression at the beginning. They were not only looking down on Xiao Xian's strength, but also taking precautions against him. Xiao Xian noticed that most of the people here lived on the mountain, and only a few lived on the mountainside. Were people like Mai and the others not qualified to join the advance group? Of course they were qualified, but without the team leader's permission, Mai was not allowed to join either. Absolute fairness did not exist. Even Xiao Xian was invited to join the advance group only because of the ancestors, and because Ta's team had not been doing well. If it were not for the ancestors, as a kid from the orphan cave, and since Xiao Xian was learning how to use traps and lassos from the old coup, Ta would have looked down on him even more. Unless Xiao Xian was really talented in the future, he would have been excluded from the advance group by Ta. The better, and the worse, the worse. The development on the mountain and at the foot of the mountain had probably gone beyond the ancestors' original plan. When the people at the foot of the mountain were thinking about how to get more food, some people on the mountain were thinking about how to get more benefits. When there was no threat from other tribes, infighting was inevitable. It was just that it was not obvious on the surface. After drinking a few mouthfuls of the water from the plant, Xiao Xian looked around. It was higher here, and he could see some weird-shaped plants in the distance. What's that? Xiao Xian pointed in that direction and asked Asua. Asua glanced in that direction and smiled maliciously. That's the skull tree. Every tree grows after eating a human head. Xiao Xian did not say anything, nor was he frightened. He just looked in that direction. No wonder it was called the skull tree. It did look like a human head, with long hair floating in the wind. As for eating human heads, Xiao Xian did not believe it. Seeing that Xiao Xian was not frightened, Asua felt bored, but he continued, it's a pity that it hasn't bloomed yet. When the skull tree blossoms, there are so many big flowers growing on it. It's very beautiful. Xiao Xian was speechless. According to what Asua said, Xiao Xian tried to imagine, but he still could not imagine how beautiful a human head covered with all kinds of giant flowers would be. In front of us is the place where the jumping fruit tree grows. Later, you just need to stand further away. Don't get close, Asua said. Got it. Xiao Xian knew his place. After resting for a while, Ta signaled the team to set off towards the jumping fruit tree. As they walked forward, the trees became less dense. They could see the scene in front of them without standing on the high ground. The jumping fruit tree that Asua mentioned looked like an enlarged weeping willow. The difference was that every drooping branch was full of round fruits, each the size of a fist. Seeing that everyone was breathing softly, Xiao Xian also lowered his presence. It seemed that the tree was very sensitive to sound. Ta raised his finger and pointed at Xiao Xian, then opened his palm and gestured Xiao Xian to stay here and hide behind the tree trunk. Xiao Xian nodded, indicating that he understood. However, he felt that something bad was going to happen. He wanted to say something, but the other team members were waiting for Ta's instructions, and Ta did not pay attention to him at all. After looking around, Ta waved his hand. 20 people rushed towards the jumping fruit tree like lightning. They tiptoed on the ground and ran quickly without making any sound. They surrounded the jumping fruit tree. However, when they were close to the jumping fruit tree, Xiao Xian suddenly heard Ta shout, "Retreat!" The others did not hesitate. Even if some of them were about to touch the tree, they decisively retreated because of Ta's shout. As for the fruits that were originally firmly growing on the branches of the tree, because of the tower's sound, some of the fruits were startled and quickly detached from the branches, shooting out in all directions like arrows and running away. Xiao Xian did not know what had happened. He only saw Ta and his team retreating in a hurry. The next moment, Xiao Xian was lifted up. They were running in a hurry, as if they were hiding from something. When Xiao Xian was lifted up, he looked back and saw something floating in the air. The wind was getting stronger and stronger, bringing those things closer to Xiao Xian and his team. Xiao Xian was carried up to a tall plant. 5 soldiers in a group pulled the thick leaves on both sides together, forming a narrow enclosed space. When they pulled the leaves, Xiao Xian could still hear the sound of the thick wood being broken. At the last moment when the leaves were pulled together, Xiao Xian caught a glimpse of those things being blown by the wind. They were like dandelions, with soft and fluffy white hair. However, those white hairs were longer, each 1 to 2 palms long. They were densely packed, flying everywhere in the sky and the forest. Puffing sounds came from afar. After all the gaps were closed, the light from outside could not penetrate the thick leaves. It was very dark inside, and the vision was not clear. There was a sense of tension in the enclosed space. Xiao Xian could hear the rapid breathing of the people next to him. They must have used up a lot of energy to run for their lives. Not only the others, but Xiao Xian also felt the danger. His eyelids twitched, and he could not help but lean back a little. While thinking, Xiao Xian suddenly heard a series of puffing sounds around him. Along with these sounds, white hairs pierced the thick leaves like thorns. One of them was only half an inch away from Xiao Xian's eyes. Chapter 76. A drop of cold sweat slid down Xiao Xian's forehead. If he hadn't leaned back a little, would he have lost one of his eyes? It looked like a fluff, but it could pierce through the thick leaves. If the leaves were a little thinner, the fluff would have pierced through them. Even if Xiao Xian leaned back, he would still have been hit. No wonder Asua and the others said it was more dangerous here, and that they could lose their lives if they weren't careful. Thinking back to when they were hunting the jumping fruit tree, if any of them had hesitated for a moment, they would not have been able to find a place to hide and would have been pierced into a white-haired hedgehog. There was no suitable shelter in the area where the jumping fruit tree grew. Xiao Xian smelled blood. Some of the warriors were injured, but he didn't hear any screams. Their breathing was still the same as before, but two of them were breathing more rapidly. After a while, Ta said, "Asua, look outside." "Okay." Asua opened the two closed leaves a crack and looked outside. "We can go out now." "Open it." Ta signaled the others to open the closed leaves. Crack. 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 The sound was still like the sound of heavy wooden planks. With the help of the light, their vision became clearer. It wasn't just Xiao Xian who had a fluff piercing in. There were also fluff piercing in other places, but in some places it went deeper, and in others it was only the tip of the fluff sticking out. The blood that Xiao Xian smelled came from the hands of the two warriors. Since they had to pull the leaves together with their hands, they naturally had to touch the leaves. If they were lucky, they wouldn't be hurt by the fluff, but if they were unlucky, they would bleed. Out of the 5 warriors trying to pull the leaves together, only 2 were injured. This was already considered good. However, the fluff was poisonous and had a certain anticoagulant effect. Even if it was just a small wound, with the warrior's healing ability, it still couldn't stop the bleeding. The arms of the 2 warriors who were stabbed were already numb. The others hurriedly poured the clear green water in their flasks on their wounds. After a while, the wounds would stop bleeding. "How are the others?" Ta asked. 3 of us are injured." "Who has water?" "Lend me some." Someone on another plant said. "We're doing fine. Only one of us is injured." Everyone was busy treating their wounds. Xiao Xian also contributed a portion of his gourd. Looking around, Xiao Xian couldn't help but take a deep breath. There were white fluffy hairs everywhere in this large area. Some places were denser, while others were thinner. However, the range of these fluffy hairs was too wide. Some insects and birds that couldn't dodge in time were hit. White hairs could be seen everywhere on the trees, on the huge grass leaves, and on the roots of the vines. This kind of large-scale indiscriminate attack could only be described as a disaster. There weren't many large animals in the forest. Their huge bodies made them a huge target. In this place dominated by plants, large animals didn't have many advantages. Even ferocious beasts like the thorn-black wind might not be able to survive here. Therefore, except for some insects like giant dragonflies and rippers, as well as some birds and small animals, the animals that couldn't adapt to the environment all stayed away from this green area. After all, this type of attack was too powerful. The one Xiao Xian encountered was just one of the many large-scale attacks he had. On the ground, there was a meter-long bird with 2 white fluffy hairs stuck in its body. It flapped its wings weakly, but it still couldn't do anything. Its muscles were paralyzed, and its claws couldn't be controlled. Whoosh! A blood-red vine stretched out from behind the bushes, which were as tall as a man. It wrapped around the bird and dragged it into the bushes. No matter how hard the bird struggled, it couldn't do anything. In the end, the vine and the bird both disappeared into the bushes. Only the sound of flapping wings could be heard. There was a soft sound. Everything was quiet again. Since entering the forest, Xiao Xian hadn't seen any animal carcasses. Now it seemed that there were many cleaners in the forest, who dragged away the animals that had lost their ability to move or were completely dead to become their nutrients. "Let's take a rest first." We'll go hunting later, Ta said to everyone. This white drizzle attack covered a large area, and at the same time, it drove away many threats. At least for a short period of time, there wouldn't be any aggressive groups like Rippers in this area. That was why Ta asked everyone to take a rest here. These white hairs are poisonous. Only a little bit on the tip is poisonous. Tua was treating the wound of a warrior whose hand was almost pierced through. He pulled out the white hairs that had pierced deeply into the flesh and showed it to Xiao Xian. As long as you don't touch the poisonous parts, they're not that dangerous now, Tua said. Xiao Xian pinched the palm-long white hair that was a little thicker than a hair and looked at it carefully. It was very light, and the poisonous part was at the tip of the tip. There was a slightly hard, small sac in the shape of an arrow, which contained the poison. The white hairs looked very soft, and in fact they were very soft. However, they could pierce through thick objects like needles in an instant, which showed how fast these white hairs were when they were shot out. Before hiding in the leaves, Xiao Xian saw that the pom-poms that looked like dandelions were made of these white hairs. Feeling the toughness of the white hairs, Xiao Xian took out his knife and wanted to cut off the poison sac at the tip of the white hairs. However, he found that he couldn't cut off the white hairs with just a few simple cuts. He had to cut back and forth, and finally cut off the poison sac at the tip of the white hairs. He didn't expect that such a thin hair would be so difficult to cut off. Ha 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 ha. I'm dying of laughter. This kid is so funny. Xian, you don't understand. Not everything can be played with. If you want to play with a rope, can I find you a grass vine? It's easy for a new warrior to think things too simply. You're still young. There are many things you don't understand. The other warriors who were resting on the side couldn't help but laugh. When they saw Xiao Xian cutting the white hairs seriously with a knife, they were just watching a show. Now, they were teaching Xiao Xian in the tone of a senior. Xian, although these white hairs are thin and soft, they are very difficult to cut off. However, after 10 days, they will disappear by themselves. Tua said. I see. Xiao Xian didn't feel embarrassed at all. Instead, he became more interested in the white hairs. Anyway, the team leader asked them to take a break. Xiao Xian had nothing to do. He simply pulled out several white hairs from the ground and put the poison sac at one end. What do you want to do? Still playing? Kiki couldn't help but walk over. Xiao Xian didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked, can I light a fire here? No, you can't. Kiki shook his head hard. The trees and grass around here don't like fire. When we spend the night in the woods, we don't light a fire. Those trees will attack us. What about a torch? Xiao Xian asked again. A small torch will do. Kiki was relieved when he knew that Xiao Xian was only going to light a small fire. Ta was standing on the side, holding the animal skin roll with the target drawn on it. Hearing that, he moved his eyes away from the animal skin roll and looked at Xiao Xian. He suddenly frowned. He didn't expect that Xiao Xian would still want to play these little tricks after joining his team. Yes, in Ta's eyes, setting traps and lassos were all little tricks, which were played by junior totem warriors or wounded warriors. He didn't care about them at all. The real warriors who admired the strong had to hunt with their own strength. The right way to hunt was to bring back the prey with a knife and a spear. Besides, those who played these little tricks would never become real warriors. The more Ta thought about it, the more dissatisfied he became. When he saw that Kiki was still helping him find the branches, Ta snorted heavily. Seeing the team leader's attitude, the others who wanted to go closer to have a look gave up. Whether they could stay in the advance group was only a word from the team leader. Why should they make the team leader unhappy? It was rare that the team leader made an exception and recruited them, but Xian still wanted to play. Why should he do that? Kiki helped Xiao Xian find a dead tree nearby. He broke off a branch and lit a fire. Xiao Xian used the fire to burn the end of the white hair with the poison sac. The white hair quickly turned black after being burned by the fire. It rolled into a ball and shrank back. Just in case, Xiao Xian burned more of the end with the poison sac. Please hold it for me. Xiao Xian handed the lit branch to Kiki, and then took out a small stone knife. He pressed the burned white hair on the trunk next to him and stroked it with the knife. After being stroked by the knife, the end of the white hair that had condensed into a small black ball directly fell off. What was left in Xiao Xian's hand was a section of white hair without the poison sac. Chapter 77. Seeing that Xiao Xian had really removed the poison sac from the white hair, Kiki was so surprised that he made a sound of and this sound had a high drawl to show his surprise. The rest of the people who were resting over there felt as if their hearts were being scratched by a cat's paw. They wanted to go over and take a look, but they were afraid of being disliked by the team leader. They could only sit there and continue to wait, but their eyes were fixed on Kiki. Unfortunately, Kiki, the big guy, blocked everyone's view. The crowd was so angry that they wanted to throw a hammer at Kiki. If you want to look, just look. Why are you blocking us? Tua didn't care too much. After treating the wounds of his companions, he walked to Kiki's side and squatted down, watching Xiao Xian work. In fact, Xiao Xian was just trying. Even if the white hair was hard to cut, it was still a plant and should be afraid of fire. He didn't expect it to work. Looking at the white hairs of different lengths on his hand, Xiao Xian twisted his fingers. Kiki saw Xiao Xian holding two white hairs, twisting and pulling with his fingers. The two white hairs were tightly connected. After a short while, the white hairs on Xiao Xian's hand, which had been removed from the poison sac, were all connected into a 2-meter-long string. It was a bit elastic after being pulled. Kiki's was dragged out longer, and his tone was raised higher. The people sitting on the side felt their hearts being scratched by a cat's paw again and again. They were so angry that they wanted to kick Kiki aside. Fuck, can't you just go aside and watch? But in the end, they didn't dare to challenge the team leader's temper. They still didn't go over. Asua wanted to go over and see what Xiao Xian was doing. Unexpectedly, as soon as he took a step, he saw the team leader's sharp eyes. He had no choice but to take back his foot. Although he couldn't go over, Asua pried a piece of soil from his foot and threw it at Kiki. Bang! The soil directly hit Kiki's back, and the soil was smashed into pieces. Kiki ignored him completely. Seeing Xiao Xian pulling the elastic rope made of white hair, he was also tempted. This person never knew what it meant to be polite. He directly snatched the thread from Xiao Xian's hand. Give it to me. Xiao Xian gave it to Kiki without hesitation. Then he continued to collect the white hairs around him. Tua had nothing to do, so he also helped to collect them. Kiki stood up and pulled the string, but it didn't break. It was really bouncy. Hey, this line is really interesting. Kiki shouted. Asua glanced at Ta, only to see the veins on Ta's forehead bulging. Kiki turned his wrist and rolled up the two ends of the thread, probably to see if it could be broken. When there was only a small piece of the thread left, he pulled hard. When Kiki's hand was about to bleed, the rope finally broke with a bang, and the place where it broke was not the joint. Ah, this is good. Xian, what are you going to do with this? Kiki moved his wrist, which was bleeding, and asked. When I have time, I want to set a trap and see if I can catch something. Xiao Xian said. The team leader's face became even darker. Ta thought to himself that he would not take this guy with him next time, nor would he let him join the advance group. When Ta announced the end of the break, Xiao Xian had already collected and connected a lot of white hairs. He rolled them up and put them in his animal skin bag. These white hairs were very light and weightless. They looked like a big roll, but in fact, they were like small dried fruits. Next, they still went to hunt those jumping fruits. Those jumping fruits that had escaped from the mother tree would lose their ability to move as long as they cut a piece of them. Everyone in the hunting group was experienced, so they could hit the target 7 or 8 times out of 10. As for Xiao Xian, he was not even qualified to pick up the fruits that had lost their ability to jump on the ground. He was dismissed by the team leader. "Stay aside, don't get in our way." Xiao Xian did not complain, but just watched carefully to see how the others cut those fruits. Those fruits moved very fast, and there were many of them when they escaped. They were dazzling and could easily distract people's attention. Therefore, everyone kept their eyes on one fruit, and then cut the next one. At the same time, they had to estimate the movement of those fruits in their minds. Jumping fruits might not be as emotional as animals, but they knew how to avoid harm. Once they were not careful, they would escape. Xiao Xian hid behind the tree, and found a chance to cut 6 fruits. Those jumping fruits that had escaped from the mother tree might stay outside for 1 or 2 days before returning to the mother tree. If they could not return to the mother tree in time for some reason, those fruits would wither directly, or be eaten by other animals, or take root and grow into new plants. What the shaman needed was not the flesh of those jumping fruits, but the core. The flesh was eaten by the advance group. Therefore, most of the time, the food that the advance group ate was vegetarian. They did not stop until all the fruits on the jumping fruit tree had left. They would pick up the fruits on the ground that could not jump, and put them into their animal skin bags. When they were hungry, they would eat the flesh, and keep the core. In addition to the core of the jumping fruit, the hunting group also cut down the roots of a kind of muddy plant. That plant was different from the others. Its branches and leaves grew under the mud, while its roots grew upwards, reaching out of the mud. They only needed to be careful not to step into the swamp. The hunting group used the looping method. One person used a straw rope to tie the roots of the plant, and the other used a stone knife to cut off the main root. It sounded simple, but it was very difficult to operate. It required a lot of skills, and it also tested the teamwork of the partners. If the main root could not be cut off in time, the roots that were exposed outside of the swamp would immediately shrink down. Once the roots were under the swamp, it would be hard to find a chance to cut them off, and they would have a great chance to escape. Of course, if they could not even tie the roots, then they would not be able to do anything. As for Xiao Xian's task, Ta asked him to pick up those muddy tree roots. If you asked Xiao Xian how he felt at the moment, he would say, "Oh, I'm just a walk-on." At night, the hunting group rested on a huge tree. There was a hole in the tree, which was specially dug out. Not only this tree, there were holes in the other huge trees as well. However, it depended on luck. Sometimes the holes were occupied by birds and beasts, and if they could not fight for them, they had to find other trees. Xiao Xian saw them pick a kind of fruit. After burning it slightly, the fruit would emit thick smoke. They would throw the smoking fruit into the tree hole. Soon, some of the little bugs in the tree holes or tree trunks would come out from the smoke and fall to the ground. When the smoke was finished, all kinds of wriggling insects would fall to the ground. While they were throwing the smoked insects into the tree hole, Xiao Xian was busy with his line. Someone in the hunting group was on guard duty, so Xiao Xian did not have to worry too much. However, Ta was very dissatisfied with Xiao Xian's behavior. When Xiao Xian asked Ta for instructions, Ta kept a cold face. After a long time, he finally responded with an angry voice, as if Xiao Xian had done something shameful. Xiao Xian actually knew that Ta did not plan to take him with them next time, and he did not want to follow them next time. Although there were all kinds of benefits in the advance group, he still preferred to hunt with Mai and the others. He had always been treated like an ornament in the advance group, and Ta, who disagreed with him and was bossy. He did not feel good staying here. It was better to participate in the hunting. The person who was throwing the fruit into the tree hole above the huge trunk turned around and saw Xiao Xian pointing his finger in the forest not far away. He asked his teammate beside him, "What is he doing?" "Setting a trap, maybe?" The other person said uncertainly. "What can we get at night? We don't need it anyway. Besides, doesn't he know that the boss hates this kind of method?" "Who knows? If he wants to play, just let him play. I think the boss doesn't plan to take him with us next time. Then let's leave him alone." For many people in the advance group, Xiao Xian was neither a family member nor a teammate. He would not have much to do with them in the future, so they did not include him in their group. There were also factions in the tribe. When the insects stopped falling from the tree hole above, Ta said to the others, "Okay, let's go up. It's getting dark." Xiao Xian had just finished his work, so he followed the others to climb up the tree. As Kiki had said, there was rarely a fire in this place, so they did not light a fire when they slept in the tree hole at night. They blocked the hole with big leaves, and soon they began to feel sleepy. Of course, some people would take turns to keep watch at night. That was necessary. Xiao Xian had already eaten when he was under the tree, so he was not hungry. On the vast green land outside, as the night fell, there were all kinds of sounds coming from far and near. It was the sound of some plants closing their leaves or flowers. Listening to those sounds, Xiao Xian fell asleep in a daze, until he was woken up by a buzzing sound at night. The others were also woken up, but they went back to sleep when they saw that the night watchers did not warn them. Xiao Xian listened carefully to those sounds, trying to distinguish the number and size of the prey in the trap from the sounds. However, he was not as good as old Ku, so his estimation was not accurate. It was night now, so Xiao Xian could not go out to check the traps, so he could only wait until dawn. He did not expect to hunt any treasures, but just wanted to see what kind of things would be in this place at night. After all, this might be his only chance to come here, so he wanted to see more. Let's wait until tomorrow. We'll know tomorrow. Plus equals new week, please recommend me. Chapter 78. Xiao Xian slept soundly in the second half of the night. He hadn't dreamed for a long time, but this night, he dreamed of something. Actually, Xiao Xian didn't know what he was dreaming about. It was a sea of green, flowing green. His whole body was surrounded by this refreshing green. Every time he breathed in the green, Xiao Xian felt comfortable all over, as if every part of his body had been washed clean. It was as if the dusty ground had been washed clean by cool water. His whole body seemed to have been purified. Xiao Xian didn't feel as nervous and depressed as before. He only felt very carefree, relaxed like never before. The tiredness and all kinds of unhappiness from hunting became negligible. He couldn't wait to raise his head and roar. All the changes were silent, but they were shocking. In the morning, when the sun came out, everyone was awakened by all kinds of noises from the green land. However, it was a soldier's hurried voice that woke everyone up. "Boss! Boss, go and have a look." The soldier had just climbed up from under the tree. He leaned against the entrance of the tree hole and said to Ta, who was reading an animal skin roll. Everyone was still yawning, but they immediately woke up. The soldier's tone clearly indicated that he had found something very special. Although it wasn't threatening, it should be strange enough. Not only Ta, but the others also followed him down. Xiao Xian was the last to come out of the tree hole. He looked down at the entrance of the tree hole. The people in the team who had just hurried down were all gathered around the trap he had set last night. What the hell is this? It looks so strange. Are these hands and feet? The hands and feet of a tree. Is this thing dead? I poked it, but it didn't move. It should be dead. Take it off and have a look. How do we do this? Ah, just pull it off, Kiki, stop. Get away. You don't know how to control your strength. There was a circle of people there. Ta asked someone to untie the thing that was tied to the noose, but he found that he had no idea where to start. The thread that was tied to the noose was made of the same white hair as yesterday. It was not easy to cut it, and he had to be careful not to break the thing tied to the noose. Tuo held the stone knife and gestured for a long time, but he still gave up. He stretched his neck and looked around. When he saw Xiao Xian coming down from the tree, he hurriedly called out, "Xian, come here quickly. There's something in your trap." The people who had been arguing noisily just now suddenly quieted down. This trap was set up by Xiao Xian the night before, and he actually managed to hunt something tonight. Last night, someone even mocked and ridiculed him. Asua glanced at the team leader who was standing next to him. The team leader was expressionless and seemed to be deep in thought. He did not seem to have heard Tuo's call for Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian walked over. The people who had been crowding around quickly moved aside to let Xiao Xian come closer. Last night, Xiao Xian did not set too many traps. After all, he was not familiar with this place, and he did not have the support of others. In addition, he was pressed for time, and no one would wait for him. Therefore, he only set 2 at random. He also found that a tree not far away was secreting a very sticky gum, so he got some of it. But now, there was something stuck to the spot where he applied the resin. It looked like a simple skeleton made of green branches. It had legs and hands, but it didn't have any complicated fingers. It had 3 toes that were slightly longer and looked like claws. Xiao Xian did not expect this kind of gum to be so sticky after it was slightly dried. When he took it out yesterday, it was just like ordinary glue, but now it was directly upgraded to a special glue. He originally thought that if there was something that ran fast at night, he would first use the gum to stick it. Even if it could run again after being stained with the gum, its speed would be reduced. At this time, the noose would also bind the object that passed by here. In the other trap, there was a brown ball the size of a soccer ball. A gust of wind blew, and the ball that was originally trapped in the net made of white threads suddenly made a buzzing sound. Then, it flew in the direction of the wind. However, because it was trapped by the net made of white threads, it was pulled back again. Due to the force, it bounced back and forth, causing the white threads to make a vibrating sound. "So the noise we heard last night was made by this ball," said the night watchman. "I heard it yesterday too. I didn't expect it to be a ball like this." "Boss, what is this thing?" asked Asua. Ta moved his gaze away from the strange green skeleton and looked at the ball that was still bouncing on the white threads. He took out the animal skin roll and opened it to the back 1/3 of the roll. They would carefully search for the first 2/3 of the animal skin roll every time they came here. Excluding the seasonal factors, they could find most of the things that could be found at this time of the year. The last 1/3 of the animal skin roll was extremely difficult to find. In the shaman's words, it was lucky to find it. Because of this, they did not look for it on purpose. In the past, the seniors rarely found the things listed at the back of the animal skin roll. A few years ago, Gigu, the team leader of another hunting group and a candidate for chief like Ta, found a kind of plant at the end of the animal skin roll. After he presented it to the shaman, he was greatly praised by the shaman. Since then, he had a higher position in the shaman's heart. Gigu's name was given by the shaman, and he was the shaman's grandnephew. In terms of relationship, he was naturally closer to Gigu than Ta. If Ta's father was not the chief, he would not have a chance to compete with Gigu. Especially in the recent 2 years, Gigu's results had always been better than Ta's. That was why Ta was so anxious to find more curly-tailed plants. He even had to turn his attention to Xiao Xian. But Ta did not expect that they would really find them. What made Ta feel even more complicated was that these things were all caught by Xiao Xian. Yesterday, he had thought that these things were small tricks that could only wear down one's willpower. Today, he felt like he had been slapped in the face, loud and clear. If Ta had known that he could use this method to catch the things listed at the end of the animal skin roll, he would never have despised these little tricks. This is the wind ball, one of the pictures at the end of the animal skin roll. Ta pointed at a round picture near the end of the animal skin roll. Xiao Xian also moved closer to have a look. The picture on the animal skin roll was very simple, but the holes on the ball were exactly the same as the one they caught. Hey! That's great! Asuo rubbed his hands and said happily. After all, if they found the curly-tailed plants, they would have more achievements recorded in the shaman's name. The others also looked happy. What about the other one? Tua asked. Everyone quieted down, waiting for Ta's answer. When they were looking at the wind ball, they did not see this kind of plant in the picture at the end of the animal skin roll. The foot of that thing was stuck to the place where the gum was smeared on, and the lower part of its body was entangled by the white thread. Because of this, it could not escape even if it lifted one of its feet. In addition, they found that this thing had arms and legs, and a torso made up of several green branches. The only thing missing was the head. Ta looked at the bracket without the head with a strange expression. When I first joined the advance group, the shaman and the former team leader told us something. Ta pointed at the green skeleton that was tied up and said, "It looks like a plant that the shaman once mentioned, the green thief." The green thief? What's that? Is it useful? The shaman didn't draw it on the animal skin roll. The others said. Ta's smile made people feel creeped out. Is it useful? It's useful. It's very useful. If it's really the green thief, we'll have made a great contribution. It's said that the medicine made from the green thief can make people have better night vision. Hearing this, everyone took a deep breath. Then, their breaths became heavier and faster. Night vision, this was what they had always wanted. Why were they so afraid of the dark? Because in the dark, their eyesight was greatly reduced. Even the middle level and senior totem warriors were afraid of the dark. Therefore, the hunting team rarely hunted at night. Instead, they hid in caves or tree holes. The warriors in the tribe had hunted all kinds of beasts and ferocious beasts, many of which were nocturnal. Some people once said that people could see more clearly at night after eating the eyes of those nocturnal animals. But in fact, it was not true. At least, people who had eaten the eyes of nocturnal animals did not feel much improvement. Maybe it was effective, but the effect was minimal. If it was really the green thief. Chapter 79. While the others were immersed in the green thief and the night vision ability, Xiao Xian carefully observed the trap he set yesterday. In fact, there was a lot of gum on that tree, but not much of it was enough to make the trap stick. Xiao Xian found that the gum flowing out from different parts of the same tree had different adhesion. He only got a little bit of gum when he cut the bark, and smeared it around the noose, but only made 2 nooses. The ground was covered with a layer of moss and grass when they were cleaning up the insects yesterday, so the area around the big tree they were resting on was clean. There was still a little smell of insects, so many animals would avoid it. But now, Xiao Xian found some traces of gum on the ground. The tree he cut yesterday had a lot of gum flowing out, but it was not sticky enough. There were some traces of being dragged on the gum beside the tree. Apparently, something had stepped on it. The warriors in the hunting group did not touch it, or there would be obvious footprints. After thinking for a while, Xiao Xian looked around, and fixed his eyes on a plant nearby. The tall tree was full of big flowers, and when the wind blew, he could see some pollen sprinkling on it. "Team leader, I want to pick a flower," Xiao Xian asked. Tower had told him to ask for permission before doing anything, and he was not allowed to act on his own. Tower looked at Xiao Xian, and said, "Okay." In the past, Tower would not allow Xiao Xian to pick flowers, because it was too boring in his eyes. But now, he felt that Xiao Xian might have found something. Xiao Xian climbed up the tree, and tried to break the flower, but failed. He had to cut it with his stone knife, and then held the receptacle, asking Tuo to catch it. After cutting 2 flowers in a row, Xiao Xian got down from the tree. Tuo, who caught the flower, had a lot of pollen on him. He had no choice, because there was too much pollen. Xian, what do you want to do with it? Tuo asked. I want to see if there are any traces on the ground. Xiao Xian said. Traces? The people surrounding the green thief also looked at Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian held the flower receptacle and tilted the flower towards the ground. With a shake of his hand, the orange-red pollen sprinkled down. Everyone watched as Xiao Xian hugged the flowers and walked around the tree that was dripping with gum. He patted here and there, and soon, the ground beneath his feet was covered in a layer of orange pollen. After sprinkling the pollen, Xiao Xian found a suitable leaf and fanned it like a fan. A layer of pollen on the ground was blown away, but some remained. The footprints made of orange-red pollen could be vaguely seen, just like the feet of the green thief who was tied there. Looking at the footprints on the ground, Tower raised his head and said to everyone, "Do as I say, especially where there is resin." The tree that Xiao Xian touched was not the only tree with gum. Yesterday, when Tower was investigating the surrounding area, he saw several trees, and the gum around each tree was flowing to the ground. The area was quite wide. At Tower's order, the people plucked the flowers that bloomed early in the morning and shook off the pollen. For a moment, the pollen and leaves were flying in the forest. Fortunately, there was no danger nearby. After a while, when the pollen was all shaken off and blown off, everyone fell silent. On the ground, where there was resin, there were many footprints. Because they were in the forest, the footprints were not obvious. Even the outline of the 3 toes could not be seen. But everyone knew that they were the same footprints as before, and they were all heading in the same direction. There were a lot of orange-red footprints, not to mention the places where there was no resin or where there were too many fallen leaves and weeds. Therefore, the footprints could not be shown by the pollen. Obviously, a huge night marching army had passed by the tree where they were resting last night, but the night watchers did not hear their footsteps, except for the one trapped by Xiao Xian's trap. Tower had been hunting in the advance group for many years, but he had never seen a night marching army made of plants like this. The Green Thief, silent at night. The reason why the Green Thief was not listed on the animal skin roll was that it was too difficult to find and could be very dangerous. The ancestors knew that it was difficult to hunt at night, and many people had died because of it. Therefore, they had no choice but to give up this tempting target. Therefore, the Green Thief and other plants that were extremely difficult to find were removed from the animal skin rolls that were later drawn. For nearly 100 years, none of the advance group had ever seen the Green Thief. If Ta hadn't heard about it from his grandfather and some senior warriors in the tribe, he wouldn't have been able to connect it to the Green Thief. For him, the Green Thief had always been a legend, and he had always envied the ancestors who had found the Green Thief. However, he did not expect that he would be able to catch one today. Although he was caught by Xiao Xian's trap, and Tower knew that he had been slapped in the face, he felt that it was worth it to see the Green Thief. Tower said with difficulty, "The Green Thief, silent at night. The Green Thief, silent at night. It's really the Green Thief. Boss, let's untie the noose and put it away, in case something else takes it away." "Yes, yes, yes. I'll go to the tree hole to get the wooden box." "Is the wooden box okay? Should we use the stone box? How about we take them all? How can we store one? Cut it. I don't know if the Green Thief can be taken away. What if it withers and disappears as soon as we leave?" Kiki muttered. "Shut up, Kiki." The others shouted in unison. "However, this noose is too tight. Xian, how do you untie it?" Tuo looked at Xiao Xian, who was standing not far away. However, Xiao Xian did not pay attention to Tuo and the others at the moment. He was now seeing something. It was a little blurry, and the surrounding sounds seemed to fade away. It was quiet all around. 1, 2, 10, 100, thousands. Tens of thousands. Maybe even more. Those green figures were walking in a group towards one direction. Compared to the green thief he caught, this group of green thieves had a head, which was like an upside-down mop. When the green thieves stood up, they were actually about the same height as Xiao Xian. They were all as thin as bamboo, quietly walking through the woods. Xian. Hey, Xian, what's wrong with you? The people over there wanted to continue shouting, but were stopped by Ta. Did he see something? Asoa said. What did he see? There was nothing but trees around. Could it be that the ancestors had shown up? Thinking of this, the people all trembled at the same time, but they did not dare to shout anymore. Hey, he moved. Kiki said in a low voice. On the other side, Xiao Xian was walking in the same direction as the green thieves. But after a few steps, he looked towards the trap again. Hey, he's looking at us. Kiki said. Kiki, shut up. Ta shouted in a low voice. Xiao Xian had been watching the green thieves walk past him, and some of them even went through his body, as if he did not exist. Xiao Xian unconsciously followed them, walking in the same direction. But the green thieves were too fast for him to keep up. Xiao Xian felt like he was being assimilated, but he quickly broke away from the feeling of being assimilated. He looked towards the trap as if he sensed something. The others thought that Xiao Xian was looking at them, but in fact, Xiao Xian was looking at the green thief that was tied up by the lasso. After being tied up, the green thief found that it could not escape with its whole body, and its head was separated from its body. It was not dead, but like a gecko that lost its tail, it left a part of its body and escaped. When the time was right, it would grow back into a complete body. Xiao Xian moved his eyes away from the trap and looked towards the direction where the green thieves were marching. He saw a green thief walking perpendicularly to the trunk of a tree, with its toes touching the trunk as if it were walking on flat ground. When it was about 15 meters above the ground, it reached out its hand and poked it into the trunk. Then it quickly pulled it out, and just like before, it walked down the tree and continued walking with the army. What was there? Xiao Xian walked over, looked at the tree, and climbed up. Ta, who had been watching Xiao Xian, signaled the others to protect him in case of any accidents. He wanted to find something with Xiao Xian's help, but he also promised the shaman that he would bring him back safely. On the other side, Xiao Xian climbed to the spot where the green thief poked the tree. He saw a small hole, and a green bean sprout-like thing stuck out from it. Looking at the bean sprout, Xiao Xian pinched it with his fingers and pulled it out. Although the bean sprout was not big, it still took some effort to pull it out. Seeing the thing that Xiao Xian pulled out was the same color as the green thief, Ta's eyes flashed. The seedling of the green thief? The green thief, with a green body, walked in the night, stealing the life of the tree for its own reproduction. It was said that the night marching army formed by the green thieves would only appear once a year. Was it really the blessing of the ancestors? I didn't have time on Sunday, so I'd like to thank the readers who voted for this book last week. This book seemed to be the first place in the last issue. I didn't see the display of Sanjiang Hanlin Academy, but it was said to be the first place. In this regard, Chen Xiai bowed to thank the readers who voted for this book. It was a pity that the popular book Return of the Cat didn't get the first place. He didn't expect this book to get the first place. So, thank you. Chapter 80. When Xiao Xian came down from the tree, the crowd gathered around him immediately. They had all heard what Ta had said. Is this the seedling of the green thief? Tua stared at the sprout in Xiao Xian's hand, which was smaller than a finger. Can it be eaten? Kiki pushed the people in front of him aside. He was about to take the sprout from Xiao Xian's hand, but was stopped by Ta Heng's arm. "Let me have a look," Ta said. Seeing Ta come over, Xiao Xian handed over the sprout in his hand. As for Keek's question about whether it could be eaten, Xiao Xian thought it should be. He didn't feel anything special when he held it in his hand, but Ta thought it was the seedling of the green thief. "Xian, how did you know there was this seedling? Did you see anything just now?" Ta asked. They had just seen Xiao Xian walk over there as if he had seen something, and climb up the tree to pull down the seedling. "Just now." Xiao Xian scratched his head, as if he was trying hard to recall. He said, "Just now, someone told me there was something there, so I walked over." "You turned around just now. What did you see?" Ta stared into Xiao Xian's eyes and asked. Xiao Xian didn't avoid Ta's gaze, and continued, "It seemed that someone was calling me, so I turned around." "Calling you? Who was calling you? Was it your ancestor?" The crowd thought of this at the same time. "Apart from this one, are there any other seedlings like this one?" Ta asked. Xiao Xian frowned, as if he was in a dilemma. "Think about it carefully." Ta slowed down his tone. Xiao Xian lowered his head, as if he was trying hard to recall. In fact, he was just pretending. By now, the images of the green thieves had disappeared, but he had some recollection of the seedlings on the trees around him. If the person who asked was old Ku, Xiao Xian might have a good explanation. But to Ta, Xiao Xian did not intend to tell the truth. Since everyone thought that he was blessed by the ancestors, then he would give the credit to the ancestors. It would save him the trouble of finding excuses. After thinking for 2 minutes, Xiao Xian pointed out some trees around them. Ta didn't care about anything else and hurriedly directed everyone to look for the trees that Xiao Xian had pointed out. Now, everything else had to be put aside. Although there were still many things on the animal skin roll that they had not found, the green thief was enough to make up for it. It was even better than the things they had found in the past. Even if these little saplings were not completely confirmed, they were still worth searching for. Xiao Xian didn't point to every tree, but every tree was carefully searched. They searched almost inch by inch. Xiao Xian couldn't tell them exactly where they were. At that time, he only paid attention to one of the trees, and that was the only one he could tell the specific location of. "Hey, I found it!" Asua shouted happily, as if he couldn't wait to swallow the seedling in his hand. If Ta wasn't watching him, he probably would have eaten it. Seeing this, Ta handed the long stone box with the headless green thief in it to Xiao Xian. "You take it first. I'll go and look for it too. Don't wander around, just wait here." "Okay, I know." Xiao Xian took the stone box and leaned against a tree to rest. The reason why he could see those illusory images just now should be because of another special ability in his body. In the past, he could foresee danger, but now, he seemed to be able to see things in the past. It was just that Xiao Xian couldn't use it freely yet. While he was resting, Xiao Xian suddenly looked down at the ground under his feet. It seemed that something was going to come out from the ground. But the others didn't notice it at all. Maybe it was because they were all in the trees and didn't touch the ground, so they didn't realize that something was coming fast from the ground. "Something is coming," Xiao Xian said. Almost at the moment when Xiao Xian said the last word, a flaming red vine came out from the ground. Fortunately, Xiao Xian reacted quickly. When he shouted, he had already jumped up, using the trees next to him to jump higher. "It's the fire spear. Xian, run!" The people who were looking for the green thief seedling in the trees quickly retreated. "I was careless." Ta pulled out the stone axe hanging on his waist and threw it out. Crack! A sound like a hard piece of wood being split was heard. A flaming red vine that was as thick as an adult's arm that was reaching towards Xiao Xian was cut off. Blood-like liquid spurted out from the broken part and spilled on the ground. However, he only managed to cut off the tip of the vine. The vine that still had blood on it continued to chase after Xiao Xian. Moreover, there were more than 10 vines coming out from the ground. According to Xiao Xian's estimation, there were at least 50 vines coming out from the ground, not including the short and thin ones. He didn't know if there were more vines that hadn't come out yet. After everyone retreated, the pressure on Xiao Xian's side was greatly reduced. His current strength was limited, so he couldn't withstand these vines that were so powerful. Although they were just vines, they were different from the red vines that Xiao Xian had seen before. The red vines directly swept their prey away, and didn't have such strong attacking power. The ones that appeared now were like spears, thrusting directly at Xiao Xian. The tree where Xiao Xian had been standing at the beginning had already been pierced 3 times, and that was only in the blink of an eye. Fire spear, because the vines were as sharp as spears when they shot out, and the fine hairs on the vines looked like fire when they floated up. That was how it got its name. The hairs on each vine were used to absorb, whether it was the sap of plants or the flesh and blood of humans. People who often hunted in this green land were no strangers to this plant, so Ta and the others knew how to deal with it. While Xiao Xian was dodging, he also paid attention to the movements of Ta and the others. This kind of behavior of the veterans in hunting was worth learning from the newbies. Now was the time to learn more. For those experienced veterans, although they didn't have fancy body movements or fancy moves, they were all skills that had been honed through countless hunting experiences. Sometimes their reflexes were faster than their thinking, and it was almost an instinctive reaction. It was a simple but practical killing move. The 20 people who had retreated and entered battle mode quickly coordinated with each other. Their attack power suddenly increased explosively, bringing with it a fierce aura that did not lose out to fire spear. Holding their respective weapons, they waved their arms non-stop. The strong and fierce strength passed through the weapons in their hands, bringing with it the sound of the wind, and smashed the waving fiery red vines. Wave after wave of attacks hit the vines. If one of them made a mistake, their momentum would be weakened. Even if the opponent was not a dire beast, they still had to compete with momentum. In the blink of an eye, a large area of the ground was dyed red. Seeing that the crisis in front of them was about to pass, a series of banging sounds came from the ground. It turned out that Fire Spear's vines had broken out of the ground, and its original exposed body had more than doubled. It seemed that it would not stop until it was dead. What made Xiao Xian even more depressed was that many of the vines that broke out of the ground were coming towards him. "Xian, stay away!" Ta shouted over there. However, after Ta shouted, he found that Xiao Xian, who was running away, turned around and came back. Seeing this, Ta was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. "Damn it, I told you to stay away, why did you come back? To drag us down? Do you think we are not busy enough here?" If it were in the past, Ta would not choose to fight with Fire Spear, but leave with his teammates. However, there were many green thief seedlings here, and he did not want to leave. He thought that the others had the same idea as him. They had no intention of retreating, so they were all in a killing frenzy. Well, it was not easy to find some green thief seedlings, but they were interrupted by Fire Spear. Many trees around were also destroyed, which made it more difficult to find the seedlings. What was more annoying was that there was a kid who was causing trouble here. A strong anger flashed in Tower's eyes. He suddenly exerted strength in his legs and stepped on a thick vine. The vine under his feet suddenly burst apart like a heavy object falling down. The fine hairs on the vine that wrapped around Tower's feet were also torn apart in an instant. Ta held the stone axe in his hand and chopped repeatedly. The air was filled with the sound of cloth being torn apart, and the sound of hardwood being chopped off. While chopping, Ta was also running towards Xiao Xian. At this moment, he wanted to kick Xiao Xian as far away as possible. Ta hated people who dragged the team down. However, Ta had only taken 2 steps forward when he found that behind Xiao Xian, there was an equally huge fire spear. It was chasing after Xiao Xian with a murderous look, with spear-like vines breaking out of the ground. No wonder that kid ran back. Chapter 81. Xiao Xian was running back with the stone box containing the green thief in his arms. He had planned to run away from the battlefield, as he knew that he would only be a burden if he stayed there. However, after a few steps, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. With his special vision, he saw another green object that looked like a fire spear approaching him from the ground. Since he woke up this morning, Xiao Xian found that all the plants in his vision were green. However, most of them were pale green, almost transparent. But the fire spear was darker in color. The road ahead was blocked. Xiao Xian wanted to run in another direction, but he found that both the fire spear and the one that appeared now seemed to be targeting him. Was it for the green thief? Or was it for Xiao Xian? No matter whether the fire spear was targeting Xiao Xian himself or the stone box containing the green thief, Xiao Xian could not deal with it, so he had to retreat. Xiao Xian quickened his pace as he touched the animal skin bag hanging on his waist. Ta was confident that he could deal with one fire spear quickly. Even if he could not kill it, he could at least force it to retreat. But now there was another one, and both fire spears were aggressive. It was difficult to deal with them. Ta cut off a part of the vine. He did not have time to wipe off the blood on his face. He shouted to the others, "Half of you go and deal with the other one." But it was impossible to deal with the two fire spears in a short time with only Ta and the others. At the same time, they were worried that there might be a third or a fourth fire spear. In that case, would they have to give up this place? They were unwilling to give up, but they did not slow down at all. They were a little impatient. What was the most important thing for a plant? The root system. However, these plants that could run freely knew how to protect their roots well. They even buried their roots deep underground, making it difficult to attack their roots. Especially for a fire spear, which was as fierce as a predator. If you attacked its weak point and could not kill it with one blow, you would be the one to die. Unfortunately, no one had the confidence to do so. Even Ta and the others who often fought with the fire spear would either avoid it or take it head-on. While Ta and the others were trying to figure out a way to force the two fire lances back, a magnified image of the noose had already formed in Xiao Xian's mind. There wasn't enough thread, so he could only make an incomplete lock. He couldn't just rely on Ta and the rest now. Xiao Xian wanted to contribute too. After all, they were a team. Success and failure were linked together. According to Xiao Xian's calculation of the success rate, the incomplete trap was worth a try. Xiao Xian had never tried such a large-scale trap before, so he didn't know how effective it would be. After all, expectations were not necessarily the same as reality. But no matter what the effect was, as long as it had a little effect, it was fine. The current situation was not optimistic, and in a place like this, it was best to end the battle quickly. Xiao Xian held the stone box with one arm, while the other hand quickly took out a spearhead dart from the animal skin bag and pulled out a white thread. Even though he only used one hand, he was still very flexible. His fingers moved quickly, and the white thread had already wrapped tightly around the tail of the spearhead dart. Whoosh! After dodging the vines, Xiao Xian threw the dart out with all his strength. But it was not aimed at the fire spear's vines, but at a point on the ground. The body of the dart, which was thrown out with great strength, pierced into the ground. The first point was set, and then the second point was ready. With Ta and the others restraining the fire spear, Xiao Xian could deal with it more easily. The position of his dodging was also very clever. He jumped up, fell down, and moved back and forth in succession, as if there was no pattern. But every time he dodged in a panic, it was actually carefully calculated. Everything was done in an instant. In the rumbling sound, the flaming red vines were swinging wildly, and countless stones and soil were lifted up from the ground by the vines. The sound of tree trunks being broken, soil flying, branches snapping, and vines being chopped all mixed together. The sound of the spearhead dart hitting the tree trunks, the ground, and the vines was too weak in this battlefield. Xiao Xian moved very fast, and it was hard to see what he was doing without careful observation. Xiao Xian's 5 fingers moved quickly, and his feet were not slow either. Every time he reached a preset point, he would complete a knot with a wave of his hand, because all the knots and connecting the nodes had to be completed in an instant. The muscles on his arms twitched continuously, and the totemic power in his body was running to the extreme, roaring and surging in every meridian. If one looked carefully, one would find that there was a layer of surging airflow around the arm where Xiao Xian was setting the noose. Xiao Xian held the stone box and ran around 2 fire spears that were close to him. Fast! 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 Setting a trap had to be fast, especially when it was set on the spot like this. Any extra movement of the prey would cause unexpected changes. In a few seconds, Xiao Xian had finished setting up the periphery of the noose, and there was only one more step left. Xiao Xian stepped on the vines with great force, and jumped away before the hairs wrapped around his ankles. Xian, what are you doing? Hey, don't run around. Seeing Xiao Xian running around the periphery, Tuo and the others were very confused. Shouldn't he be hiding far away? It wants to steal the green thief. Xiao Xian roared. Steal the green thief? The fire spear's target was the green thief. Before anyone could say anything, Xiao Xian shouted again, I've set up a trap. Everyone, be careful to stay away from it. As he spoke, Xiao Xian rushed between the 2 fire spears. Stop! Xian, what are you doing? Ta roared angrily. The crossfire between the 2 fire spears was not strong. Obviously, the 2 fire spears had no intention of fighting each other. That was why Xiao Xian dared to pass through them directly. Besides, with Xiao Xian's current speed, although he could not resist the fire spears, he could still dodge. Xiao Xian stepped on the vines and jumped up. His hands moved so fast that they seemed to disappear. The spearhead darts flew in several directions, and the knots were tied up in a flash while he was jumping. The trap was complete. Xiao Xian did not stop. Xiao Xian, who was holding the stone box, was a bait. No matter where he ran, the 2 fire spears would attack him. Because of that, Ta and the others followed behind Xiao Xian to block most of the attacks. A vine shot from below. Xiao Xian did not dodge, but blocked it with his teeth knife. Bang! A sound like rocks colliding with each other was heard. Tuo and the others saw Xiao Xian being whipped into the air. Kiki, who was closest to Xiao Xian, wanted to rescue Xiao Xian. If no one picked him up, Xiao Xian would fall directly to the ground. However, Kiki was shocked to find that the person who was whipped into the air and fell back down in a parabola, stopped somewhere in the air. Yes, he stopped there. He was standing steadily. At the same time, the others seemed to hear some creaking sounds like wood being tightened. Not only Kiki, but also Ta and the others opened their eyes wide. However, when they looked carefully, they found that Xiao Xian was not standing there in the air, but on a white line. When did the white line appear there? The crowd wasn't sure, but when they thought of what Xiao Xian said about setting a trap, it seemed like it might be useful. Everyone, leave. Tuo, Kiki, Suo, step back. Xiao Xian asked the people in the circle to leave. Although it might not hurt anyone, it was better to be safe than sorry. Standing on the white line, the trap in Xiao Xian's mind was very clear. Several vines shot at him, and at least one of them would fall into the trap. Although the 2 fire lances were separated, half of them were in the trap set by Xiao Xian. If any of the vines fell into the trap, it would trigger a series of lasso reactions. It was a chain trap. Xiao Xian felt that everything around him seemed to slow down, and time seemed to be stuck. Among the things he could see, there were only a few vines shooting at him, and some coils that others could not see clearly, but were getting clearer and clearer in his field of vision. Other than that, everything else was blurred into the background. Closer. It was getting closer. One of the vines was twisting, and the hairs on it were flashing like flames. Chapter 82. With the help of the white string, Xiao Xian leaped up and dodged a vine that shot straight at him. At the same time, he held the last spear dart in his hand. The remaining white string wrapped around the body of the dart. As Xiao Xian leaped, the white string tightened. Xiao Xian could clearly feel the pulling force from the body of the dart. Taking a deep breath, Xiao Xian quickly swung the spear dart to the left and right, and then pulled it back forcefully. Kill! Creak, the sound of sawing wood being snapped by steel wires sounded again. However, this time, it was not just a few places that made the sound. Almost at the same time, the sound came from dozens of places at the same time, and the sound was sharper than before. Those who heard the sound felt as if they were seeing a thick tree trunk being tightened, and even their nerves were tensed up. Although Tua, Kiki, and the others did not know what Xiao Xian wanted to do, they knew that they should try their best to cooperate with their teammates in such an emergency, even if they did not think that Xiao Xian could really do anything. Unexpectedly, as soon as they retreated, they heard the creaking sound that tickled their nerves. Everyone looked over, trying to find the reason for the sound, but soon they were completely shocked by the scene in front of them. The originally loose net of ropes tightened in an instant. As the vines swung, some of the vines were entangled by the net. Feeling the binding force, the vines struggled even harder, and the more they struggled, the tighter the net of ropes wrapped around them. All these changes happened in less than a breath's time. Bang! 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 Immediately after the creaking sound, the sound of strings breaking or hardwood breaking rang out almost at the same time, making those who were tensed up feel as if their brains were about to explode. Along with these sounds, the blood of the fire lances splashed out. Whether it was the vines close to the ground or the vines in the air, the red liquid flowing in them splashed out almost at the same time along with the sounds. The blood-red liquid that was spurting out from the two different fire lances carried the violent killing intent that belonged to the predators of the plant world. It was like two flowers of blood that bloomed at the same time. They were even more colorful than the vines that were like flames. Tower used to think that the blood-red flowers drawn on the animal's skin roll were the flowers that looked the most like blood. However, at this moment, he realized that the scene in front of him had overturned his previous thoughts. Such a visual shock would leave a deep impression on him even after a long time. There was no smell of blood, but it was as if he had entered a slaughterhouse. One set of kill, one set of kill, one set of sure kill. Xiao Xian felt that he might be able to get a feel for Old Ku's method of killing. However, this half-finished lasso could only be regarded as a shortened version of the chain lasso, which was not a complete killing move. It was far from the level of a sure kill move that Old Ku had mentioned. If the white line was long enough, the center of the noose could be contracted into a net bag similar to the one used to tie up the wind ball. However, the fire lances were too big in size, and there was more than one of them. Without enough materials, Xiao Xian's noose could only encircle half of the two fire lances. However, it was enough to solve the problem in front of them. The broken white line shook and then fell down lightly. The splashing red liquid was like a flower blooming and then withering. The broken vines were thrown up and fell down again. In the blink of an eye, the two fire lances that were fierce just now withered. The fire lances had been chopped by Ta and the others for a while. After the noose was retracted, they were injured even more. They twisted their bodies and retrieved the injured and uninjured broken branches to the center. Then, like a screw, they drilled into the ground. After a short tremor, they disappeared. The other fire lances were not as injured as the former. However, it was unknown whether they were afraid of the previous attack or they knew that they had no chance of winning. They no longer persisted and drilled into the ground, leaving far away. The battlefield that had been booming just now quieted down again. Only broken branches and flowing red liquid with the smell of plants were left on the ground. Xiao Xian was panting heavily. The strength in his body was surging. When he was setting up the traps, he had almost reached his limit several times. His strength was almost depleted in a short time. Because he had used too much strength, in order to complete the trap in the shortest time possible, his arms, shoulders, and legs were all sore and numb. After he relaxed, his fingers trembled uncontrollably. It was estimated that they would not stop for a while. Xiao Xian was exhausted. He did not want to stand anymore. He lifted his feet and shook off the red liquid that flowed to his feet. He looked around and saw a broken branch as thick as a bucket behind him. He did not care about the red liquid on the branch and directly went to sit down. He also put the stone box that he was holding onto on the ground. The sound of Xiao Xian putting the stone box on the ground pulled everyone back to reality. Tuo looked at the mess on the ground and then turned to look at Xiao Xian. When he was about to ask something, his arm was grabbed by Kiki. Tuo was still nervous because of the scene just now. Kiki's grab startled him. He felt that his arm was going to be broken just like the fire spear vine. He almost swung his arm away. "WH. What are you doing?" Tuo shook his arm, trying to shake off the creepy feeling of being strangled. "My legs are a little weak." Kiki frowned. It was rare for a person who was not afraid of anything to be so scared. Just now, he was closer to that side and planned to cut down another vine. In the end, that scene happened. Two of the vines that were closer to him splashed liquid all over his body. It was completely different from the carefree feeling he had when he cut down the vines himself. Instead, he felt a chill in his heart. "Xian, what was that just now?" Tuo asked after calming down. Hearing this, the others all looked at Xiao Xian. "Just now. It was a trap," Xiao Xian replied. Tuo and the others were in disbelief. How could a trap be set like that? Xiao Xian did not explain. In fact, such a large trap existed a long time ago. Some people in the tribe also used it. However, Old Ku said that people gradually abandoned this skill due to the pursuit of power. Plus, the stronger the prey, the higher the requirement for the material of the trap. The material was not easy to find. Later on, many people who liked to use the trap stopped using it. Therefore, there were even fewer traps that could be passed down. Looking up at the sky, the surrounding tall trees were almost all broken down, leaving an empty space. Under the blue sky, the broken branches and sawdust that were thrown up when the trap was closed had already fallen down. The only thing left was the white hair that was slowly floating in the breeze. Xiao Xian reached out and caught a piece of white hair that had fallen down. This broken piece was only half of its original length. The large coil of long wire that was connected with great difficulty had all broken. Most of it was broken into small pieces like this. After all, it was not a real steel wire. It was reasonable for it to be broken like this. If the white wire was stronger, the trap would have been set more perfectly, and the trap would have been closed faster. At the moment of closing, the vines would have been cut quickly, and the blood would not have splashed out like this. Then it would have really killed the vines without leaving a trace. Of course, it was precisely because there were still many flaws in the line of white hair that caused the visual effect and shock to be even stronger. Not only were Ta and the others shocked, but Xiao Xian was also shocked. He really did not expect such an effect. It was the first time he set up such a large trap, and the effect was much better than he expected. This was also thanks to the white wire. Unfortunately, as Old Ku said, the materials were hard to find. Ta looked at Xiao Xian with a complicated expression, and then asked the others to clean up the battlefield. They could not eat the broken branches, nor were they listed on the animal skin roll. So they threw them far away. As for the red liquid on the ground, Ta did not care. The fire spear was the predator here, and the blood of this predator would make many creatures retreat until the blood disappeared. The most fortunate thing was that the big tree that they stayed in yesterday was still there. At that time, in order to look for the seedlings of the green thief, they had left some distance away. Later, when they were fighting with the fire spear, they moved further away. Therefore, the tree only had some traces and holes on the trunk. At least, the place where they slept tonight was still there. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.